Nope.
Oh no, that's not what I meant, bro. I just like attitude-wise.
And we're live, and everybody's mother in town just heard that.
Ooh, this chai, bro.
All right.
This is the chai from Sim's house, bro. You have no idea what you're in for.
Uh-oh.
Have you ever had the Indian chai?
Yeah. A long time ago.
Yeah?
Yeah.
They have a small Indian community in Indonesia.
I've noticed.
But they are like integrated though. They're not like, I don't think they still carry on the traditions of old.
Kind sir, can you do me a favor and turn the... Oh, I can do it from over here.
Turn the what off?
Just the volume is a little high. What color am I?
Oh, hang on. I can do it a little bit lower.
If I say Islam alaikum gangsters, is that haram or no?
No, you can do whatever you want, bro.
Okay.
Thank you.
Check.
No, Sim, I'm sorry. I could have just done it from here, bro.
Hang on a second, bro. I don't want you to...
Hello. Yeah. A little lower, please. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. There we go.
Listeners, Assalamu alaikum. We're getting started here. Hadi Bismillah, as to say in Ottoman empires.
Yesterday I was introduced during our talk at ICW.
Yeah.
I had a interview style dose with Shahada. I always heard about the Ottoman style memorization of the Quran. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
They memorize differently. And he's like, Sheikh Hassan was like, that's the best way to memorize, to keep it solid. But we could save that for another.
Oh, so what exactly was he teaching?
So it was in front of the masjid that night. So he was mentioning, because I always heard about it, but I never really knew exactly how they did it. So imagine you're memorizing the first juz, okay?
Yeah.
Alif Lam Mim. You go all the way to the end of the first juz. When you start off memorizing, you don't start from Alif Lam Mim.
Yeah.
Everyone generally knows that anyway. But you start from the last second to the last page, the last ayah. On the second to the last page, you start off with that, and you memorize the last page. That's how you memorize your first juz.
Why?
So then the next day, you memorize starting from the third to the last page, the last verse, and third to the last page, and the full second to the last page.
Interesting.
Okay, so the reason why they did that is a lot of times they have a hard time connecting what verse is next on the next page. That's usually a big part of forgetfulness.
Really?
Yeah, always. That's one of the hardest things for a lot of people, especially when they start memorizing for the first 6 months to 8 months, right? So what that does is, but when you're reciting it back to your teacher, you're starting from in chronological order of the Quran.
Wow.
So what that does is by the time you finish your first juz, you've memorized it backwards and forward.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So he's like, the people who memorize like that, they have to do very little revision compared to other people that memorize the Quran. A lot of times, if it takes them 2 years, they spend 1 year in revision. He said, but in 2 years of memorization of how long it takes you, you have to do very little revision.
Awesome.
Yeah. Is that pretty gangster?
That's awesome.
Yeah, dude.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Mad Mamluks. My name is Sim. Along with me is my one co-host, Sheikh Amir. Mort is on vacation again. Must be nice.
We have a
Mort.
good replacement for Mort, though, for today.
Yeah,
Mort,
yeah.
we've replaced you.
Yeah. Well, isn't it nice that Mort is always on vacation? MashaAllah. Say MashaAllah, everyone.
MashaAllah.
Everyone, the listeners, say MashaAllah.
A lot of vacation.
Just constantly on vacation.
MashaAllah. Must be nice.
Folks, think about us on patreon.com/the Mad Mamluks. Sheikh, what happens to people who don't help us out through Patreon? Tell them the punishments that they face.
The wrath of... No, it's it's all good, bro. You know, just invest. Don't donate. Just invest in the Mad Mamluks. That's it. We're asking for your investments, no donations.
Yeah. Well, there are all kinds of punishments that I'm sure exist. But at least if you can't donate, hit the old like button, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, hit the bell notification to be notified every time we go live. Sometimes we do odd hours like this, right? And you don't get notified. You're like, oh, Mad Mamluks, you're not updated to date on your Twitter or whatever. Just someone's always complaining about something. Well, if you have the bell icon clicked,
That's all you got to do.
that's all you got to do.
So easy.
Easy.
Half a second.
And then throw a comment in the comment section below saying how handsome Sheikh Amir is.
Our next guest, though, by the way, he took it off, though. But he's like, he's about to put it back on. MashaAllah, for the barakallah. Our replacement for Mort, basically.
Our guest today, we are so happy and delighted and deeply honored to host Harrison Elliff. Elliff, is that how you pronounce it?
Correct. That was first time go.
Elliff is the first letter of the Arabic alphabet as well. Is that
is.
your new Muslim last name?
No, my Muslim name, I have been told, is actually supposed to be Harris.
Haddis.
Haddis. Oh.
Allegedly.
Haddis.
Yes.
But your name you were born with is Harrison.
Harrison's my born name.
Harrison.
Harry's what most people call me. But
Harrison's
anyway,
a dope
Assalamu alaikum, gangsters. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Good to see you.
And so there's a lot to talk about with Harrison here. Or do you prefer Harry, right?
Y'all can call me Harry. Brother Harry is the name of my YouTube channel. I'm going to take this off because I can't do both at once. I know I'm handsome, but daggum, I can't do both at once. So Brother Harry is my YouTube channel, and Harry is what I normally go by in real life. So
Nice.
Yeah.
YouTuber, TikToker extraordinaire, and former... What rank were you in the army?
I was
Private?
E5. I was an E5 on training wheels towards the end.
What
and
does
then
E5 mean?
That means sergeant.
Sergeant Harrison.
SubhanAllah. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And how old are you now? I hope you don't mind me asking.
I'm so old I don't even remember that I had a birthday next month. That's how old I am. And I actually forgot how many years old I am going to be. I'm going to be 37 next month.
Oh, that's nothing. Why? You're younger than all of
You're
us.
a baby.
You're younger than all of us.
I know. I'm seeing starting some gray over here, man. I don't know about that.
Well, you know about the Islamic ruling about dyeing your beard, right? You could dye it exactly the hair color you wanted to.
Oh, can it be dark blue? I don't know about that.
No,
Can it
you
be
just-
blue match
It
my
just,
shirt?
it
You
just
just
can't be black. It
I
can't
know.
be pitch black.
I'm just kidding. I know. It has to be like natural colors, right? Yeah, that's what I figured.
For the longest time, I thought that you can't dye it in any color. Well,
Right.
But I found out later that it's just black you can't.
Dark black, yeah.
Is there a particular reason?
Just Hadith of Rasulullah said you shouldn't color your hair black.
There's no reason though, right?
I'm not sure of the reason. Wallahu alam.
Yeah.
I mean, people have speculated. I don't know if that's what it is, but
I thought it was like, okay, the meaning said black, like, or the words, his words said black, but meant like whatever color hair you have, you don't dye it to that natural color to give the false impression that you're young.
no, it's supposed to make you look younger, which is fine, which is a good thing, especially during jihad. But there's something specific about it being like dark black, like jet black, that you shouldn't do. But I can't remember the reason. Allahu alam,
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's really good to have you. We just had a nice solid lunch with our brother Harry, the Muslim.
At
Or
a-
Harry, brother Harry.
Brother Harry.
Harry the Muslim. Brother Harry.
Harry the Muslim?
No, I'm thinking about somebody else. Something the Muslim. No.
You are evil, shit.
No, who else is something the Muslim? What other podcast?
Muslim cowboy? I don't know who
No,
you're
something
talking
the Muslim.
about. Muslim skeptic, Muslim, three Muslims.
No, it's somebody
Muslim
else.
metaphysician.
Don't worry about it. But anyways, yeah, brother Harris. So what's happening, bro? Why are you in Illinois right now? What's happening?
Oh well, I've been friends with brother man over here on Facebook for a time. I came here today to talk to y'all about some white pills, and in a world full of sadness and darkness and depression, we got some white pills going on here.
White pills meaning what? What's that mean?
Political, cultural, social, personal, all the above.
Well, let's roll before you go into that. Let's give the listeners a little bit about your background, how you came to Islam. Brief overview. You don't have to talk about your childhood or anything,
Okay.
Unless if you want to.
unless.
You don't want. I'm not going to sit on the couch and tell you about my mom. You guys aren't paid enough to hear that.
Well,
Let's go.
our moms are probably 10 times worse than yours. 'Cause naturally,
That's debatable. That's debatable. Like anything else in Islam, that's debatable.
No, go ahead.
our moms are horrible.
With the chalaka and everything. That's what I heard.
Oh, chapel? You're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Ours use belts, man.
Ooh, wait.
Belts, hangers.
Yeehaw.
Hangers are the favorite.
Ooh.
Plastic hangers. But...
Plastic hangers. Yeah.
No, but go ahead.
No,
Tell us about yourself a little bit.
So, well, my name is Harry, and I am originally from the great state of Texas. And I went to Iraq when I was about 20 years old. Wow. And I was military police, which you could call a combat babysitter. Originally wanted to be a 20-year man. And what happened was I got blown up. Kid came next to our truck, was parked to a school, next to a school. And he somehow snuck a bomb behind us. He was about maybe 8, 9 years old. Wow. Wasn't very old. And I was playing gunner in the turret at the day, which in a vehicle called an MRAP, which is a 6-wheeled vehicle, not a Humvee. And I got injured. I got a lot of shrapnel in me still.
Wait. So walk it down. Walk it through us. He stuck a IED underneath your vehicle?
He didn't stick it underneath the vehicle. We were parked next to a school, and this kid comes over to the school, and I'm like in the gunner's turret saying, "Hey, kid, get out of here!" You know, I don't want to shoot a kid going to school. That's not very nice. So I just yelled at him. I mean, I just threw some things at him, and then he went into the school building, and somehow he pulled something out of his backpack, and he got the turret. He got the truck, basically. And I got injured.
Who else was in it? Were you the only one in there?
No, there's a couple other dudes. We got injured together.
They're all okay though.
Yeah, we're all okay. We're all alive. Yeah.
Okay.
We tell stories and make jokes about it now.
So you got shrapnel inside your body.
Yeah, I got shrapnel. I got a jacked up lower back. I had a liver laceration. I was already crazy before I joined the army, but I was even crazier after that. So
So what did that experience do to you? Did it make you more?
It set me on a journey towards Islam.
Really?
It did. Because, first of all, I ended up losing the army as a career for a couple reasons. One was that I now realized by that time, I was towards the end of the deployment. This is 2008, 2009. First we were in Samara and then later in Mosul. And by that time I'd realized, like a lot of us were starting to realize, that we had been bamboozled. We'd been sold a bad bill of goods by our own government. And so that was the first thing, realizing that career path for me is now dead. It's gone. I can't really keep doing that, besides which I'm injured and screwed up. And then the second thing that did for me was I came back disillusioned and frustrated, like a lot of guys do. And it also started making me think about, wait a minute, they told us these people were terrorists. We're over here to fight terrorists. Bad people. What does it really mean to be a terrorist, and what is the real Islam? What is the real Islam? Because I had Muslim friends. I had a brief overview about, Islam in social studies class as a kid. So I kept hearing different things, because before I went to Iraq, I used to believe things like, well, you saw him on Patrick Davis's podcast yesterday with Muslim metaphysician Haqiqatjou, Robert Spencer. I used to believe Jihad Watch. I used to believe David Wood.
Really?
I used to believe those guys. Yeah, I used to believe the things they said about Islam, and gradually I was realizing that what I was being told wasn't true. And then I'd hear things from people who were friends of mine that were Muslim when I came back. Oh, what is Islam? Is Islam this? Is Islam that? And I realized there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. And so about 4 years ago, after traveling around the Muslim world, I now live as an expat in Indonesia. I took my Shahada. Not in Indonesia, but I took it here in Texas. I'd been traveling around the Muslim world again after I got discharged from the army. Went to a couple different countries. Went through Turkey a little bit. Went to Malaysia. Went to Indonesia. And I started to see, oh, wait, there's this whole spectrum of stuff going on here. Yeah, it's like Islam is not a monolithic group of 1-point-something billion people. It's a very diverse, and everybody's got a different opinion.
Everyone's got different cultures.
Everybody's got different cultures. And not everybody does the Sharia the same way. So I've been Muslim for 4 years, and I am still wrestling with this question. I'm not a Sufi. I'm not a Salafi. I don't have a madhab at this time. I might never. I might pick one. I don't know. But I'm still trying to figure out what is the real Islam. It's an ongoing journey, and it should be until the day you die. I should always be trying to figure out what the right answer is. And my channel is about me exploring those issues with people, and I like the feedback I get from a lot of the people in the comment section. They actually improve me and make me a better Muslim, I think.
Mm. What you mean by the real Islam is you mean like what's the best way for you to practice bodily Islam? I mean, you already obviously believe in Allah being one and He sent the messenger. So your Islam is there, which, and I'm just clarifying, maybe, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but just so listeners don't get confused either, that what is the best approach to how to bodily, physically worship Allah with your limbs, but you obviously believe that Allah is one, Muhammad is the final messenger, you know, all that basic stuff, right?
Right, absolutely.
But what you're referring to is the fiqh. What should I, if anything, if there's even movement or whatever the case is politically, but you're still on your journey.
Fiqh is part of it, trying to figure out the proper fiqh.
Yes.
But is Islam a religion of peace, or is it a religion of violence? Was Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, a terrible dude, or was he a good man? Was he fallible, or was he infallible? Over time, as I moved away from Christianity and started to realize, like many of the people that come on this podcast, that the Trinity is wrong, and I started to understand what the real truth about early church history was, part of my journey towards Islam was trying to figure out, well, I know how the Christians messed it up. Did Muslims mess it up too? You know, so there was things that I would find along the way in my journey towards Islam, like when I learned, for example, that the Birmingham Quran basically shows that the Quran is preserved from day one. I mean, I was like, wow, they got that right.
Yeah.
That's off to those people.
It's actually cool to have that type of skepticism, because you like, it takes that level of honesty and maturity. Like the people that I used to believe with mess certain things up, I have to have the same scrutiny for the other place that I'm going to look to, right?
Yeah.
That's very important.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I tongue-in-cheek joke, and nobody, I don't want anybody to take what I'm saying out of context here. Nobody panic here. If I was going to say as a joke what kind of madhab I am, I would say I'm the Joe Rogan Experience madhab. In that I am always skeptical of everything, and I'm always looking at what's on Google. And then I'm looking at 5 other, 6 or 7, 8 other things on Google. And I'm always talking to people. Always. So I am most definitely not a scholar. I'm not a sheikh. I like milkshakes, but I'm not a sheikh. I hate to even call myself a student of knowledge. I like to think of myself as a perpetual student forever. Even if I made it to the scholastic level and I was like the next Hamza Yusuf or Yasser Qadi. Am I saying his name right?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, all right. Cool. There's a lot of names that in the Muslim world that I say wrong all the time.
Don't worry, we say it too.
Okay.
We mess it up too.
That makes me feel so much better. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so...
You should see how the Turks pronounce Muhammad. They say Mehmet. It's completely wrong.
Oh, that's completely jacked up.
Mehmet.
Man.
How's that?
Mehmet.
How's that even close to Muhammad?
No. Man, that's bad. That's really bad. All right, well, I don't feel bad anymore.
So-
Turkey, you're slacking. Pick up. Pick it up. Get it right. It's all those years of not having the Adhan called in Arabic made them weak.
I like it. This guy's hilarious. So when did your channel start? I know that you have your own channel. When did that initiative begin?
I mean, I had done Crash and Burn on YouTube a couple times with political commentary. When I came back from Iraq, I studied political science for a couple years. And then, I don't know if it was PTSD or traumatic brain injury or something, but I couldn't sleep. I still have trouble sleeping.
Did you really feel that were you ever diagnosed with PTSD?
Oh yeah. The government knows how damn crazy I am. I'm really crazy.
Really?
I'm off the walls crazy. No. I'm not like dangerous off the walls crazy. But
you feel its effect. You feel its effect.
Oh yeah, I don't sleep normally.
Oh wow, subhanAllah.
And if I talk to an old school Muslim person, they're like, "Oh, brother Hadi, this is opportunity for you to do tahajjud every single night. And I'm like, dude, I just want to sleep. Come on, man. Let me just go to sleep. Dang it. And so, no, I went from having like straight A's and being able to memorize the capitals and prime ministers and presidents and cabinet members of all kinds of countries, and then I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't remember my name, barely. I could just I failed everything. And it spent years trying to figure out I had to drop out. So eventually I got into my dad asked me to come over to Southeast Asia because my dad used to work as a contractor for the Navy. He lives in Vietnam. And he lives in the town he used to fly missions out of.
Really?
Yeah, it's a little town called Nha Trang. It's on the coast. It's like their Pensacola, you know. That's a great town. It's one of the top 10 beaches in the world.
In Vietnam?
Yeah, Vietnam. Yeah.
Nice.
I lived there for a couple of years, and then, I was still Christian at the time, and I decided I did not want to marry a Vietnamese woman.
What do you got against Vietnamese women?
I don't have anything against Vietnamese women. Other than that, they're crazy. They're just as crazy as I am, and that's not going to work.
Sir, you haven't met many Palestinian women, have you?
No, I'm not married Palestinian girls either. I know exactly what they're like. That's out of the question, too. That's not going to happen. No.
But yeah, so you got the injury, and then you decided to explore Islam. Why? Well, what made you say, "Hey, I got some time on my hand. I'm recovering from my injuries. I'm going to go study Islam," the people who just blew me up?
It started out as a political thing because I realized there's a couple things going on. One is I realized that the government had bamboozled us. But two, I realized that people back home in the United States were gullible into falling into this propaganda because people believed we were in this existential battle with Islam.
So you're saying you realized this bamboozlement was not because of Iraq was actually a country that harbored weapons of mass destruction, or was it some other type of bamboozling that you're talking about?
It's a combination of things. One is where's this really great book I read in my journey to Islam? It's called A World Without Islam. It's written by a former CIA analyst. What the heck is his name? I'm a Dory. My memory is terrible.
That's okay.
But anyway,
we all know you got the PTSD.
Oh, well, it's not just that. My memory is bad. No, it's bad, Jared. It's bad. I'm getting old. Getting old. Anyways, so he wrote this book, and it really broke it down for me, binary style, about how in his theory was that Islam and Christianity got caught up in the East versus West drama that is way predating the whole Islam versus Christianity issue, if that makes sense. Yeah. So long before Christians and Muslims were killing each other over the Holy Land, long before the Turks were in the Balkans and all that jazz, you had the Greeks and the Persians going at it, for example. So this is like an ancient East versus West thing. It's kind of like in the United States we had North versus South.
Yeah. And
that North versus South dichotomy, if you will, has now transferred into red state versus blue state. Yeah. Right. So, I'm not going to... I know that this is the politically incorrect podcast, and y'all are a bunch of Uncle Ruckuses in the Muslim world. So, I'll just say it. I'm not going to say slavery had nothing to do with the Civil War, but I'm not going to say it's also the full story. Yeah. It was a political football for two sides of the United States that didn't like each other to fight about. So that's why I'm saying, in that same sense as North versus South, red state versus blue state, we're always picking a new political football to fight over. East versus West is always picking new political football to fight over. And also, in the United States, we used to have a more rational foreign policy, especially after World War II, when we sent up Bretton Woods, NATO, United Nations, all this stuff we set up. we got caught up. There's this group of people that some people know, and in fact most people know or hear of, but they don't always fully understand, called the neoconservatives. And the neoconservatives are this group of people who, many of them are former Trotskyites. Many of them are former Trotskyites. Some of them are former socialists. They basically believe that it's okay to the true believers, not the people that they pass the baton on to later, but the true original believers believe that it's okay to deceive the American people into war, because they feel that America, it's a country and a culture that's very prone towards nihilism and partying too hard, if you will, and lack of values. Not completely untrue. So they felt that in order to save the soul of America, we need to have a perpetual war state, war machine, so that we have a sense of meaning, a purpose. So there was that. Now people understand, like, the situation is completely turned in 20 years. Like, people now understand what the war machine is. They understand, even if they don't fully understand who the neoconservatives are, they understand that those people do not have our best interests at heart. The uniparty establishment, those people don't care about us. Military-industrial complex, those people don't care about us. You know, so people understand that now. But at the time, that was my thinking. Like, I really wanted to explain to people what was going on. I wanted to show them, hey, Islam's not our enemy. These people are lying to us. This is an ancient East versus West sort of thing. That's what was going on in my mind. And then, so that's how I started looking at all these different scholarly opinions about what Islam is, what Islam actually teaches.
I see.
So, yeah. Then
this is all about 4 years ago or earlier?
Oh, this has been going on for like 15, 20 years, off and on, yeah. It's got.
So how long were you contemplating the idea of Islam, though?
Oh.
Like a true contemplation. Like,
True
man,
contemplation.
what am I doing? What am I doing in my life? I should be Muslim, or should I be Muslim?
Man, about 5-6 years ago, I started looking at that. Because, so about 9 years ago, I went to Indonesia to meet my now ex-wife, who was Christian, Chinese and Christian. We've been divorced and separated for over a year and a half now. I recently got remarried to another Indonesian woman who is, you know, conservative traditional Muslimah. And I became Muslim about 4 years ago. Now, that was one of the things that killed my marriage with my ex-wife. I'm not going to go on the full story.
Yeah, forget about it.
That's not, we don't do it, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, but she was the reason I came to Indonesia. And then I got off the airport in Soekarno-Hatta in Jakarta. Soekarno-Hatta is the name of the international airport there in Jakarta. And I was like, oh, wow, there's a lot of Muslims here. I wasn't expecting this. I thought it was just more tropical stuff. And I was like, oh, wait, I know Indonesia's the largest Muslim country in the world. I completely forgot that. Yeah, and then I was like, oh, what? Okay, so I got to compare and contrast. So there's the Muslims in Iraq that wanted to kill me, and then there's these Muslims here that just want to, you know, feed me and give me tea. And it's like, okay, all right, there's a little compare and contrast here.
Yeah. Depends why you're there, right?
Well, it depends on why they're there. The Indonesians weren't as... If I had been Dutch 100 years ago, the Indonesians wouldn't have been as nice to me. So, you know, that's fair. Fair point.
So why the marriage into Indonesia, though? I'm just curious.
Well, because...
Texan boy. Why Texan boy Indonesia?
Well, because after meeting my ex-wife, I think she just wanted to come to America, but I was like, I just want to stay in Southeast Asia. This place is cool, man.
Nice, huh?
Yeah, there's coconuts everywhere. You know,
she met her meal ticket finally out of Indonesia, and he's like, I want to stay in your country.
Yeah, right. That's
Psych.
At least I have a white man with me, though.
Right.
I've done it.
Because you know what happens back home, right? The whole family celebrates because she can, when she becomes citizen, she can go apply. Like, you just pulled one right underneath her legs. Right?
Yeah, I'm kind of a bad person. I'm not
okay.
gonna lie. Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're bad. It just means you got.
No, I'm kind of a bad person.
No, you're a human being. You change your mind. Like, it's you initially wanted something, and
simple.
You realize like, hey, you know, being around Muslims is more important.
Yeah, I don't blame my ex-wife for being upset about me becoming a Muslim. I really do.
I'm actually curious. Do people ever give you a hard time for saying Muslim instead of Muslim?
I do, but I keep saying Muslim because you know what?
No, when you say Muslim.
Muslim. No, I just say Muslim as a joke.
No, when you got
Right.
it. Yeah.
But do people ever give me a hard time for saying
Yeah, like
Muslim?
brother, you're supposed to say Muslim, not Muslim.
You know, I do every now and then. You know what I do? I just ignore that.
Nice.
Because they all mispronunciate Arabic words.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
the Arabs mispronunciate. I'm not as articulate as the other Texan you've had on this podcast. He's much more articulate. Than
The cowboy.
Yeah, he's much
Brandon.
more articulate. Yeah, he's an actual cowboy. I just play one on TV. I was an asphalt cowboy driving trucks for a while, going back and forth between the United States as a trucker, working as in the United States and then coming back here. So-
Import, export, smuggling? What was
No, reefer, and not reefer.
it? Whoa, reefer?
No, frozen beef, bro.
Oh, beefer.
Speaking of beefs, we got a lot of beefs in the Muslim world these days.
Bees?
Beefs. Beefs.
Oh, beefs.
Oh, that doesn't sound right. Hold on a
Beefs.
Bakaras.
second. There we go. Beefs.
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 Beef.
A lot
like-
of beef.
Beef.
A lot of
Oh, conflict.
Yeah.
That's what he means by beefs.
Beefs.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Not just frozen burger patties going from Colorado to California, but you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, look,
That too.
one of the misconceptions that I think, Harry, as I've met many converts, people who just are new to Islam, and even Muslims themselves, like, Muslims need to stop doing X, Y, or Z. Muslims got to stop doing that. Why are Muslims? And I'm like, this is 1.2 odd billion. I don't know. What number are we at? 1.7?
Almost 2 billion, but yeah.
2 billion,
1.7.
right? Somewhere, a lot of people. We're almost a quarter of the planet, right? That's a lot of people. And when you just look at the general statistics of the planet, irrespective of the religion or anything, most of the planet is generally ignorant about everything.
Yeah.
Ignorant about their level of education. When you go off to a different country and you see any country, whether it's Muslim, non-Muslim, you see the level of education people have, and you begin to understand how little the world knows, and the bubble that you're in
Yep.
the United States, in some of your social circles or whatever, you're looking at something from a completely different lens. The masses out there, the billions of people are out there, are not looking at things the way you are. And one of the things I see from at least converts and many Muslims in general is that Muslims need to stop fighting amongst themselves, or they have this thing. Well, yes, that's true, but when I go to a Chicago Cubs game, a baseball team from Chicago, for those who don't know the United States, but there's literally two sides of the same fans in the same field in the stadium. There's one called left field and one called right field. So so between innings, both fans are yelling at each other. From the right field, they're yelling, "Left field sucks. Left field sucks."
Yep.
They're all Chicago Cubs fans. Okay? And then the left fielders are yelling at the same thing back at them. This is the tribal mentality is built into human beings, and I think it's built biologically as a survival mechanism. It's like we want to build ourselves or group ourselves into these small units of tribes that are designed to protect each other from existential
Sense
threats.
of security.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed in Islam as I've become Muslim and become more Muslim, getting deeper and deeper into the deen, is I find my political tribal identity kind of as a conservative changing. And in some ways I'm more conservative, and in other ways I'm become more liberal. So it's interesting, the more you try to get closer and closer into Islam, deeper and deeper into Islam, if you're trying to do it properly, which I hope I am, I'm probably screwing up something along the way, I guarantee you. But I do find that I have to I hold on to some parts of my identity from before, and some parts I let go, and I change a little bit. There was but going back to what you're talking about with tribalism, left field versus right field.
Yeah.
There's this guy named Jonathan Haidt. I don't know if you've heard of him before.
No.
So Jonathan Haidt I'm probably screwing up his name, too. Jonathan Haidt is a...
Dude, you're the funniest guest we had in a long time.
Oh, man, just wait. Just wait till after 2 a.m. Anyways, Jonathan Haidt was this guy who talks about genetics and personality and politics. And there are certain biological attributes and genetic attributes and traits that tend to be ascribed to different groups of people politically. So conservatives and liberals in America literally have different genetic personalities and different biological personalities. So, for example, there's some research that says that people who are more physically fit and larger and stronger are more likely to vote conservative. And people who are physically weaker tend to vote liberal. Because, well, they're more likely to...
No, you're right. It matches their personality differently.
Yeah. There's also some research that indicates that when conservatives look at violent images, for example, the medulla oblongata... What was that in Waterboy they called the medulla oblongata?
I don't know. That was in
the medulla oblongata.
Yeah.
Something about
Chris. Sorry to cut you off. Chris Tucker was like, he's like, oh, they're gonna kill me. Tell them to shoot you in the medulla oblongata. You won't feel. Just tell them to shoot you there. You ain't gonna feel itch. I remember that. I remember that from the 90s.
It's in Waterboy.
Is that Waterboy?
Yeah. Well, your sucks. Gatorade is better. That's right. Yeah.
But anyways, yes. So the conservatives, yes, they're when they see violent images and they see images of violence,
we're more likely to react. Whereas liberals are more likely to be like, there's a violent dead image of a dead person on there, or they're less likely to be disgusted. There's like personality traits associated with genetics that are related to levels of disgust. So liberals are less likely to be disgusted about certain things, which could explain why conservatives, for example, look at homosexuality and they're like, ugh. And liberals are more like, hey, come on over here, Fred. So there's certain personality traits that are associated with certain political persuasions that are underlying associated with genetics. And so I have a theory, I have a postulation. I'm not a scholar. I am not a sheikh. This is my suggestion that part of our tribalism in the Islamic world could come down to at least partly, towards different genetic differences. That maybe people who choose to be Salafi might have some inclination to be Salafi from birth, and people who choose to be Sufi might have some degree of genetic predisposition.
Wouldn't that be awesome after hearing this podcast? They could be like, hey, I was born that way.
That's right.
Born that way.
That's right.
I can't do anything about it.
I'm celebrating the Milad because I was born that way.
That's right. I've started a new madhab. I've started a new excuse for all kinds of bad behavior.
So, how did that... I'm actually interested in how, based on everything you went through in your life, how did this transition in Indonesia? How did this begin? Where is it now? What was the middle point? Are you fully acclimated?
You're talking about beefs between Muslims and stuff like that, but you're living in Indonesia, right? Because the problems within Muslims, the infighting and stuff, is expressing itself how within Indonesia, or is it something that you're just noticing online or through your interactions with Muslims elsewhere?
I have been noticing beefs in the Muslim world ever since I was first in Iraq at 21 years old, and talking to Iraqis when we're not doing anything and just hearing them talk. Mister, he is Sunni, he is devil, don't listen to him. Mister, he is Shiite, he is... You can't say that this family show. Anyways,
the family show.
Anyways, I've been hearing this from day one. I just look at them, like, guys, I can't tell y'all apart. You're both brown. You both smell funny. Y'all haven't used deodorant in 2 weeks. I don't think y'all know what deodorant is. Y'all haven't bathed regularly. Y'all have the same goofy-looking mustache. I can't tell the difference between the two of you guys. And I legitimately, I don't understand. And so that's how I got Oh, and then there was another guy. Look, mister, I am Kurdish. I have bigger head than both of them. And here I am with broom sweeping because I am so clean, unlike Arab animals that you have to deal with. Right? Like, what is going on here, man?
Yeah, that's a real thing, bro.
That's a real thing. It's a real. They got beefs, ancient beefs.
Yeah.
You know, way before they were Muslim, man.
So how does that play into now in Indonesia? You want to get married into Indonesia, and then how do you decide you want to live there and stay there and?
Well, he chose a wife that he's not going to have a beef with, first of all, right?
Okay, first of all, Indonesian women are great if you're crazy and you don't want to have a beef with anybody. Except for Achinese women. They're very spicy. Stay away from that. They spicy. Women from Sumatra Island, that's spicy. That's spicy territory. You stay away from that if you want to be safe. No, but Javanese women, which are the majority ethnic group, the Javanese women are very sweet and gentle and kind, like my wife, very peaceful. The house could be on fire. She's like, Alhamdulillah, we're all alive and outside. You know? And I'll be like, damn it.
Java.
How am I going to explain this to the insurance company? And she's not thinking like that at all.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah,
everything happens for a reason, and it's very good. You need something probably very calm in your life.
Sometimes the reason is because you're dumb and you make big mistakes, and you need somebody to correct you and keep you on an even kill. Yeah.
So what scholars are you reading? Because it seems like you want things to improve with Muslims, but you also have to learn Islam as well, because you've only been Muslim 4 years now, right?
Yeah. So before,
so you're doing like two things at once, and that's fine too. I'm not one of those people who believe that. Because there are plenty of those Muslims who will say, Harrison, you need to calm down. Stop worrying about the problems with the Muslims. Just focus on your own ibadah, your own worship. Right. Purify your heart. Get rid of all that whiteness out of your heart. All that white privilege. Get that all out of your heart. That's what I tell my son. He's a little white son that I have.
He's a little white son.
Really evil.
He's a little white son.
Oh, he's a little
really
white son.
Evil kid. You know, I bought one of those little playpens.
This really is the Muslim
huge
Uncle
playpen.
podcast.
This kid got the hugest playpen that any kid could have. The kid broke the sides of the playpen where they joined together. He broke it open. He took his white privilege and throws his legs over it. It just escapes.
He can't be colonized, bro.
He can't be colonized.
Cannot be colonized. Wow.
Can't.
He broke out of it to colonize, bro.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. You might. That's not for me. It's for you. Yeah. So, I would say, it's both. Tasarruf, trying to cleanse yourself internally. Yeah, that's a thing. And you don't have to be Sufi to appreciate that concept.
Which scholars are you learning from, though?
So, the way I started getting into details about what Islam actually is and realizing how many difference of opinions are and learning about the 4 different madhabs, the way I did that is for a few years before I became Muslim, I was a truck driver, long-haul truck driver, and I would just listen to all the different podcasts and sheikhs.
Wow.
Yeah. So everybody and I got the whole gamut. I had everyone from Asim al-Hakim, the Salafi in Kuwait, to Dr. Zakir Naik, to Hamza Yusuf, to everybody in between.
Who intrigued you the most out of all of them?
Oh man, they're all fascinating.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think they're all fascinating. I actually didn't find out about Daniel
Haqiqatjou.
Oh, he's not a scholar.
Haqiqatjou. Jew.
Just say DH.
DH. I didn't find out about DH until after I became Muslim. I find him to be fascinating. I agree with a lot of his stuff. I also disagree with a lot of stuff, but I like him. On the conservative spectrum, that's the guy I go to that I find really fascinating. On the liberal side of the spectrum, I find Mufti Abu Layth really fascinating. And as we were talking earlier, some people don't even think he's really Mufti. But I don't care. I still think he's fascinating to listen to.
He certainly is. He's incredibly enjoyable to listen to. He's a charming personality.
Yeah.
He's, I've already talked about my problems with some of his message to our listeners. I don't want to rehash it, but, he's a beautiful human being. I know now he's going through a process and he's rediscovering himself. And I want to, just give him some breathing room. And inshallah, he figures out whatever he needs to figure out. But But yeah, that's awesome that you listen. I'm kind of the same way.
Everybody.
And at least not just me myself, but the guys on the show. We've had good relationships with Daniel Haqiqatjou in the past, up until recently, but that's partly my fault. But
Well, at least you're honest about it.
but also Mufti Abulait, and we like to learn from everyone. We're not saying that we co-sign on every single thing that they say.
Oh Lord, no.
But
No, definitely not.
yeah, so I mean, we've talked about issues like that, but this show's about you, and this is I want to learn about what exactly is the reason why you've gone towards those, because there's still different ends of the spectrum, right?
Right.
Haqiqatjou and that stuff is on one end of the spectrum. Abulait is on another end of the spectrum. Why aren't you in the middle? Why aren't you learning from the mainstream scholars that you should be?
I also learn from people in the middle.
Okay.
People like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, I consider pretty middle of the road.
Okay.
Someone who I would describe Hamza Yusuf as Al-Ghazali-esque without the trappings of Sufism. Mm-hmm. That's how I would describe him. I think that's pretty fair.
Awesome.
I'm currently going through courses on Seeker's Guidance, and because I have the memory of a goldfish, I have to retake the quizzes about 4 times. And like, wait, answer 4 is C. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I learn from the people in the middle too, the boring people. But there's part of my personality, like, because I grew up listening to like watching Monty Python,
Oh yeah.
Holy Grail,
Yeah,
and
that's how we grew up with that too.
and I listening to Frank Zappa as a kid, and so I like the weirdos on the outside, like Haqiqatjou and Mufti Abulait. I like the weirdos on the outside, man. They're interesting. I'm wearing a shirt that's pretty weird for America. I mean, I'm a weirdo too, man.
Yeah, and it's awesome. It's awesome that you kind of found us as a platform that kind of resonated with your audience that you're building as well, that has that kind of weird personality that wants to learn from everyone, and is kind of forming their own interpretation of Islam that isn't really confined. It's confined to traditional Islam,
Yes.
but it's not confined to one specific scholar's interpretation.
Right.
But have you considered? Look, I think in Indonesia, generally everybody's Shafi'i. Like
All Shafi'i.
Yeah, right. So I'm pretty sure you already thought about this. But have you ever thought of just for like 1 year starting off, like making a plan to sit with a scholar, like a recognized scholar in Indonesia, and just going through beginning of fiqh all the way from ABCs, Elliff Batas to, and you probably already have.
Yeah.
But I'm saying is
Yeah, I thought
because a
about
lot of
that.
these guys that you're talking about, a lot of them are du'at, they're in da'wah, they have, it's not a bad thing, they have agendas, they're working on a specific goal, but
Yeah.
strictly just like how we extrapolate and how we follow extrapolations from the Quran and Hadith as far as fiqh on a very studious tutelage level. I think that would be a great thing for you.
Absolutely.
And again, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying,
Absolutely. No, I
I think that
agree.
would be a great thing because
100%.
what it's going to do is it's going to cut out all the fuzziness and the other people you still listen to for entertainment, but then you have this class, somebody who's taking it slow, knows your pace and not going to overburden you. And even if it's little piecemeal, and what it does is it gives you a greater appreciation. You get very thorough on an advanced level, much faster.
I haven't sat down and had regular classes with people, but I do listen to and consult
Yeah.
from a lot of people in
Yeah.
the field too. It's funny. You said my audience is weirdos. No, I'm a weirdo.
You
My
made them weirdos.
No. I didn't make them weirdos. They're bringing. I actually try and take all these things and go back to the center. Like I'm not saying I like the weirdos because I want to live on the edge. I'm saying I like the weirdos and everything in between because I want to try and go right back to the center and try and stay in the middle road.
Yeah.
So, like, when I was looking at becoming Muslim, and you saw this in the recent PBD podcast with
DH and
DH, a Muslim metaphysician, and Richard Spencer duking it out. The number one issue that came up on that podcast over and over and over again: apostasy,
Yes.
apostasy. So I've been thinking about apostasy for many years, even before I became Muslim. And Muslims get kind of defensive. They're like, no, we can't get rid of anything in our deen ever. And I understand that because, you see what happened with Christianity and it got weird.
yeah.
Yeah.
It got weird. They got rid of they literally threw the baby out with the bathwater. Now they got a rainbow baby, and it's scary looking. It's a freak. And,
Daniel's philosophy, at least, or approach with that question was interesting because I know he knows the detailed response.
Because he's given it before, yeah.
No, but he knows how to give a much more seasoned or in-depth response. But his strategy was like, we're not going to back down from it, and we're not going to shy away from it. We're not going to give the bullet points related to how apostasy is handled. It's like, for example, in the 1400 years of Muslim rule of the various caliphates, very few people were ever killed for apostasy. It was extremely rare.
Never.
I don't even know of a documented case, to be like, I don't know of a legal manuscript that it said so and so was put to death because he left Islam.
Yeah, rather it was wars like the Ridda of Abu Bakr's time, and there were a few other like
where
that.
So to add the next point or next bullet point would be to say that apostasy was punished or enforced when there was a rebellion or active struggle against the state or to undermine the authority caliphate.
If the lives of Muslims were in danger, it was a consideration.
If there was an open mockery or a way that was the apostasy was, or the apostate was using his decision to make a point in society or to undermine the authority of the state or to denigrate the religion of Islam, then those kind of considerations would be made.
Yeah, but I agree. Yeah,
but at least from the application of the law, right? Because what Richard Spencer and them are saying is that apostasy equals death. Right. And it's just not as simple as that.
No, and the DH and Muslim physician were just like, yeah, we own it. We kill people if they want to leave. Get out of here.
No, and they give rational reasons too. But the thing is that, look, this is something we were mentioning at the restaurant too, is that if somebody apostates individually, nobody actually knows. That's between them and Allah.
Yeah.
So then how does it become known? Is when they are brave about it, or they trying to influence other people within the Islamic government, their neighbors, their people, their family. Then it becomes a problem, and even then, that person has to be taken to court to see how many people he's influenced, what's happened, and all that kind of stuff.
They try to convince him out of it.
Exactly. But the thing is that you're telling me there haven't been people that left their iman and their Islam fully while living in an Islamic state, and nobody knew. That probably happens all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
The thing is that when people are proud of it in this age, when we talk about it now, people are open about it, and they're proud of it, and then they challenge Muslims over it. They change their family members, them and their siblings. If this is the oldest sibling, they convince their little siblings not to fast. This happens like even in DuPage County. People who have turned away from Islam, and they teach their siblings how to like hide food and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to fast in the bathroom, all that weird stuff. But you said something very interesting in the restaurant. You said that when Americans hear the word apostate, it's a very different thing, and you want to be able to explain that to people.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with everything you said, and then in my journey to Islam, I read a lot of scholarly opinions in the middle talking about the things that you're mentioning. There's actually a difference of opinion among the four classical madhabs about how to approach apostasy. In the Hanafi tradition, correct me if I'm wrong, Sheikh, but in the Hanafi tradition, it was only men that got killed for apostasy. Not women, is that correct?
From what I understand.
I'm a Dori, so I'm just making sure that I said that right. Okay. So there are some scholars that say that this was mostly about military conquest. There are other people who say, like you did, in the middle, and then there are other people who are on the more conservative spectrum who say, well, no, we find out somebody left Islam, doesn't matter what it is, just, off of their head automatically. So for Americans who are looking at Islam, like myself, before I became Muslim, and we're thinking things in terms of, Richard, because I've always been politically conservative and used to believe in Richard Spencer and David Wood and all that. I mean, Islam, at best looks like good, wholesome family values, but at worst, it looks like a death cult to a lot of Americans, because it sounds like a suicide pact. Oh, wait, so you've got this thing in the Quran that says no compulsion in religion. Okay, well, I'll take my shot. What if I change my mind? Oh, now you have to kill me. It sounds like this sounds kind of scary to an American. So that's why we need.
So you just said you even listened to David Wood?
That's what he's saying.
Yeah, I
he
used to
be a
be
big fan, bro.
I
Back
used
in the day.
to listen to all the stuff, man. I used to have massive haterade in my heart right here for
He used to be
Islam.
a jihad watch guy, bro.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay. You
If
were
I-
neck deep.
yeah, haterade.
Haterade.
Haterade every day.
Have you talked to David Wood since?
No, I never talked to David Wood. I just watched. his
Just
stuff.
watch the stuff.
I'm talking about.
But
people
it would
like
be
David
kind of
Richards,
fun
President.
to show David Wood like this video and say, "Hey, one of your best or most favorite followers of your content."
I mean,
became
he
Muslim."
wasn't my favorite. I'm just saying I listened to people like that.
Yeah.
Michael Savage.
All right, man. You should just roll
Yeah,
with it
all
and just say,
people.
"Yeah, I loved you, David Wood. Now I'm
Michael
embarrassing
Savage.
you."
Yeah.
Wow, I
Michael
remember that.
Savage.
Michael Savage, we used to listen to him.
Cockroaches.
Me and Mort used to listen to him all the time when we were young, just because we wanted to understand their arguments.
Yeah.
We listened to a lot of far right commentary that would be playing all over the radio. Usually, it would come in on late night, or when you're down south, you would listen to it all the time on the radio. But yeah, we always wanted to hear their different perspectives and learn how to rebut those arguments.
Red diaper dopa babies. That's what it's saying.
Rush
Michael
Limbaugh
Savage.
too, yeah.
El Rushbo. Yeah, no. So like, yeah, I would. Here's what I'm going to say to people who are sitting on the fence about Islam, and this is a criticism of the Muslim community, the people giving dawah, and also people who are looking at Islam. I'm gonna back this up here for a second. Is it a little bit long-winded?
Yeah, go
a little
ahead.
bit long-winded. Okay. So before I was Muslim, before I became Muslim, I'm gonna settle down here a little bit. I used to be Eastern Orthodox Christian. My family background growing up was not religious. I was baptized Catholic, wasn't raised in a religious home. Like many, American kids growing up in the 80s, 90s, whatever, My parents were kind of sort of into the New Age movement, growing up. My parents actually met in some sort of commune back in the 1970s. Before, excuse me, beg your pardon. That used to believe that the Ice Age was coming by 2020. So my parents were into some wackadoodle stuff back in the day, and they grew out of it, of course. But I got into Eastern Orthodox Christianity for a lot of the same reasons that people from America and the West become Muslim.
I see.
Yeah. And so what we found in Eastern Orthodox Christianity was spiritual warfare, a jihad. See, the Orthodox Christians, their councils of Nicaea preserved some nonsense with the Trinity, but they also preserved the proper understanding of spiritual warfare, which is their version of jihad. Jihad and spiritual warfare and orthodoxy aren't exactly the same thing, but they're pretty close. So Eastern Orthodox Christianity and Eastern Orthodox spirituality, Jordan Peterson said it very well. He said it's like Protestantism is like accepting the king's ransom. Jesus dies for your sins, And that's how Western Christianity has kind of become. Jesus is there on the cross to save you. But in Orthodox Christianity, Eastern Orthodox tradition, you are called to be like Christ, to pick up your cross and struggle. So it's like, to a young man in particular, it's like, man, this is like tough manly challenge, And so you see now, it used to be that it was feminist people that were becoming Muslim. Like, not feminist, but it used to be mostly women becoming Muslim. I don't want to say feminist.
Yeah, I know what you
ex-feminist. People were like, oh, women's rights, and I can cover my body and not be a sexualized object. This is awesome. And now we got this new group of people coming in, like the Andrew Tates and whatnot. They're like, oh, wow, this is tough. This is a challenge. Muslims stand up. They're proud. They're not afraid to fight. They won't back down. Different crew of people, but it's a similar thing, because Orthodox Christianity is very base Christianity. They have not changed anything in 2,000 years, for better or worse. They have not changed. They're very much like the Muslims. They do not change anything. They refuse to bend to modernity. That's part of why the Matrix, the powers to be, want to take out Vladimir Putin so bad. And it's also why some people along the way to Islam get into Eastern Orthodoxy. Andrew Tate, if I'm not mistaken, at one point considered himself a Romanian Orthodox Christian.
Correct.
He talked about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's something about that pathway eastward that leads to Islam, and Eastern Orthodox Christianity is usually one of the steps in between. Yeah.
So back to apostasy.
Back to apostasy. We got sidetracked here.
Yeah, because being this whole framing of the discussion, apostasy equals death, is a very black and white.
Disingenuous.
It's not a correct framing of.
No.
For example, if I said betraying America equals death in U.S. law,
Yeah.
that's correct on its face. Yes, but how? How do you betray America?
I have an answer for that question. I would a very big this big. So there's a big difference between me like selling American nuclear secrets to the Russians and me going to a U.S. embassy in Singapore with dual citizenship and saying I would like to renounce my American citizenship and go peacefully on my way. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sheikh, but Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, if I do remember correctly, there were incidents where people would come and ask to, hey, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon you, I'm just not feeling this Muslim thing. And he said, all right, off you go. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never heard of.
Just because I don't know it doesn't mean it's not true.
I would have to go back and look at that. So nobody quote me on that. I'm
Too late.
Dory.
You're on the internet. They snipped it. You're in.
No, but look, I'm being completely honest. Just because I don't know it doesn't mean it didn't happen.
No, but what you're trying to say, at least, is that if someone had wanted to leave Islam peacefully and go and settle in a different land,
right,
that it may have been within the realm of possibility that he would have gotten that kind of a permission. That hey,
right.
Because there were hypocrites and there were people who were
hypocrites for sure. Yeah.
People who were actively undermining Islam while pretending to be Muslim.
Yep.
Those type of people, we're not talking about those. We're talking about people who were saying that, hey, this is just not working out, and want to leave. I don't know of any incidents like that. It would surely have been recorded, and I'm sure it would have been brought up in one of these debates if there was an incident like that. But
requires some research for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
The thing is, when you were around the Prophet and his Sahaba, you were either actively a practicing, very serious Muslim, or you were one of the hypocrites who were actively working to undermine,
or give intelligence to the mushrikeen, the whereabouts of Rasulullah in order for him to get assassinated.
Right. So
there wasn't much waffle, is what I'm saying. There wasn't much waffling back and forth between those two types of identities in Meccan society, at least at that point.
That's why Dr. Shabir Ali, who is like very obviously Canadian in his approach to things, I like. I don't agree with everything he says, just like I don't agree with everything that anybody else says, and you should not agree with everything that I say, because I say some ridiculous stuff sometimes. But Dr. Shabir Ali made a good point, and I see a couple other people on YouTube. I've read other scholars and sheikhs saying similar things. I've talked to some other sheikhs and scholars who have said similar things. There's a military component to renouncing your Shahada, and it does make sense to me. So in the Army, we have what's called UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's not the same thing as it's not the same thing as civilian justice. It's a separate legal code, separate legal courts, whole 9 yards. If you abandon your post while you are in active orders as a soldier, you can be put to death. Like the guy who, what's that guy's name that walked off his post in Afghanistan? They later found Obama traded 5 Taliban for him, and people died. What was his name?
John Walker Lynn? No, that was John Walker Lynn was
I can't remember his name. Anyways, he was pardoned, I think, based on his mental incompetence. There was some sort of mental problem he had.
Wait, he left and joined the Taliban?
No, he got off post and he tried to make a peace deal with the Taliban or something crazy like that. He was trying to. It was weird. What was his name? He's a sergeant too. What was his name?
Sergeant Bergdahl?
Bo Bergdahl. Bo. What were you thinking, man? Anyways, Bo Bergdahl.
Did you know him?
No. I'm just wondering what he was doing. He just wondering what he was doing. It's just he just walked up post in Afghanistan one day, like, I guess I'll go talk to the Taliban, try to negotiate a peace deal or whatever it was that he was doing. And he got people killed by doing that because they went to go try and rescue him. And people died. People lost their children. And so, is in the early Islamic days, long before the United Nations, back when we had to do real politics, which was another issue that got brought up. Islam conquers. Well, Christianity conquers too, because we're all conquering each other. It was real politics back in the day. That's just how it was. No.
Everyone has to conquer. Yeah, there's no way around it. Humans have to conquer.
We were all just players in the game. Hate the game, not the player. Come on now. Come on. It was like, come on, Robert Spencer, whatever your name is. Be real. and so there's a military component to the apostasy laws. And I think Dr. Shabir Ali pointed out wisely that he thinks that because the Hanafis said, well, you can execute men but not the women. Well, why wouldn't you execute the women? Well, because the women, one, at that time in society, were not as influential.
A lot of it has to influence and power, yeah.
Even now, women are still not as influential, just for natural, obvious reasons. Sorry, ladies. Sorry. And also because women are less likely to take a scimitar and a camel and go ape and start killing people. So, when you are a soldier, which many Muslim men in the early days of Islam all had to be, like the militia, kind of sort of thing, like 1776, like everybody's kind of like a citizen soldier in a sense. Every man was. You knew secrets. So you knew where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, lived. You knew where all the trenches were. You knew where all the scimitars were. You knew where all the camels ate. You knew where everybody got their water. So if you left and you told the enemies of Islam, you'd get people killed. It's a lot different than now. And Sheikh Hamza used to wisely, I think he also pointed out that now we live in an age with so much fitna and internet and cushiness and computers, and everybody's going to have to go on a UBI pretty soon because robots and computers are going to take over, and just it's so easy for people to get lost in the sauce, so to speak. Yeah. So he kind of alluded to, I think, something similar to what Abu Bakr did, where he temporarily suspended the punishment of cutting of the hands because there was a famine. Mm-hmm. So you could say that because we're in this modern time with internet and everybody's confused and everybody's surrounded by all kinds of nonsense in modernity, and there's no real war going on for most people, especially if you live in the West, it's easy to get lost in the sauce. So, we would have to start apostatize, killing everybody. So maybe there's a reason to temporarily suspend the punishment based on that.
No, and people are as good as their leaders, so
right.
There's a lot of excuses for people. And obviously, look, there's going to be two camps, right? There's generally people who assume responsibility and say, hey, we have to set a precedent. And there's going to be a lot of people that get hurt in the process, but that has to be what saves Islam. And then you have another group of people that are going to say, or another type of leadership, which has always existed,
right?
We're going to have to be a lot more generous because enough people don't know because of all of the chaos, because of there's so much ignorance everywhere. We have to. So obviously, both are human problems, and both come with side effects, right? And both come with lots of dilemma, and those choices are never easy.
One of the things that is not talked about often enough, Sheikh, and he just mentioned the cutting of the hand of the thief, and similar laws like this, or along with apostasy, stoning to death of the adulterer, etc. All of these are highly. The spirit of these laws are deterrence.
Right, deterrence.
It's not like the actual enforcement, and I think that's not talked about enough. Well,
right.
Especially in these debates, because you don't want to look weak, and I think that's one of the thing that's not mentioned often enough after these debates.
Everybody's got to be base, bro.
Everyone wants to, posture, and Daniel and Jake did a fantastic job. I've talked about it on Facebook and put a post, so I'm on the record of encouraging or being supportive of their effort. It was incredibly difficult, but they did a really good job.
A huge platform.
Awesome. Huge platform, millions and millions of people watching, huge personality like PBD's right there in the middle, trying to facilitate this type of discussion.
Did a pretty decent job.
He did an excellent job, and PBD's trying to, there's this effort that's happening between the conservative aspects of Western society to reach out to Muslims and find some sort of common ground to face this perceived threat of the woke movement, the LGBTQ movement, and
Rainbow Nazis.
Yeah, the rainbow Nazis. And so Jordan Peterson tried this in the past, and he was getting a lot of people on board, but then he made the fatal mistake of what? Interviewing Benjamin Netanyahu. He brought him on, and the Muslims just said,
nope.
Have at it, Hoss. You can keep trying to build branches down. When you bring that person to the table, all bets are off. And he shot himself in the foot, and he's now no longer relevant at all in Muslim discourse.
Yeah, he's not. He's forgotten. He's completely forgotten.
So if PBD is ever watching the show, I would advise you, first commend you on your effort to bring people to the table.
Plus, he was like, I want to get Muhammad Hijab really bad. He was saying that.
Yeah, he wants to bring Muhammad Hijab on and stuff like that. These are positive steps. But when you bring war criminals to the table, people who are unapologetically killing people indiscriminately, there's no room for compromise with those type of people.
Can I go back to something that I wanted to come here and really talk about, which is the white pill. The white pill about Israel.
Well, what is the white pill?
Yes, please
White
explain.
pill means that, a ray of hope, sunshine. Black pill means darkness, nihilism, giving in, accepting fate as it is. Red pill means an awakening. Blue pill means going back to sleep and going back in the matrix. But white pill means, all right, this is awesome, a ray of hope, an opportunity.
Okay.
So, okay. When my parents got divorced, my mother decided to go off and marry this guy who was a quack doctor, Zionist, Jewish, atheist, eugenicist. Wow. Okay. So I grew up hearing this quack doctor who should be in jail prescribing people all kinds of nonsense that I will not go on to in this podcast, and getting dragged into that nonsense with that man, who my mother has since wisely divorced. This man would come and have conversations with me. He'd be like, Harry, the Nazis had the right idea, but they should have killed all the handicapped people instead of the smart Jews like me. And so I was just sitting here at the breakfast table, 13 years old, looking at my mom, wondering what the hell she had been thinking, leaving my dad for this loser. And then I would go to school and hear conservative evangelical Christian kids talking about, Israel is our greatest friend in the whole wide world, and I support the Jews, and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, what Jews are you supporting? Because then I'd talk to other Jewish kids who were more liberal, and they'd be like, I don't support Israel. And I'd be like, what is this thing? And I realized that what Zionism is and has always been, is a trauma response. Carl Jung would say that the torturers were once the tortured. Yeah. So you see this in Palestine. They're acting like the Nazis. And I've been trying to explain this to conservative Christians, fellow conservatives, for a long time, and they're like, oh, that's kind of anti-Semitic, Harry. I don't know about that, man, And then then the cell phone cameras came out, and people started seeing gradually what was going on in Palestine, what's been happening to Palestine for years, not just the Muslims, but the Christian Palestinians as well. And now the cat's out of the bag, and now Joe Biden doesn't want to meet with King Bibi. And, I mean, of course, Joe Biden's a Democrat, but the Democrat Party used to be, just as on board with Israel as everyone else. So here's my white pill as a conservative person who voted for Trump twice. Here's my white pill to the Muslim community, and here's my suggestion. The white pill is that Americans, both left and now on the right, are starting to see through the nonsense of Israel. The older generation of conservatives, the diehard evangelicals, they're not going to change their mind. But the millennials, people my generation, we're 50-50 if you look at the polling data. And the people who do support Israel in my generation are like, yeah, but we got to give something to Palestinians. Yeah, but we got to have a two-state solution at least. And then you look at the Gen Z. The Gen Z liberals, the liberals in the Gen Z generation are super hardcore anti-Israel. They don't support it. And the Gen Z conservatives, the white kids that are a generation younger than me, you know, you look at TikTok, which is basically Gen Z Central. It's liberals talking about the crimes of the Israelis against the Palestinians, and it's also conservative Gen Zers making TikTok videos that go and then it's got like Hitler going in the background, and you're like, what the hell is going on here? And you realize that's the future. And you look at the polling data and you realize, based on generational, support for Israel is just going down, like it's sinking like a rock. The right wing is like going to get there just as it is with the left wing now. So because you know, Pat David, he's wisely going, hey, we got all these things in common, we should be good to go here, right? But the one thing that is keeping us from really embracing each other is the Israel-Palestine conflict, because there is still a hardened base of support for Israel no matter what. So here's my proposition to both Muslims and to Patrick Bet David, because the election's coming up. So Patrick, if you want to get Muslims like yours truly to show up in full numbers in places like Michigan, which are battleground states, Wisconsin. No, I don't know about Illinois. I don't think Illinois is in play, but you know, places where there's large populations of Muslims in swing states, especially like Michigan, Wisconsin. You're going to have to sit down with Muslim leaders in America. Not just Mohammed Hijab and have a chit chat. You're going to have to sit down with Muslim leaders in Muslim American communities and have them sit down with Republican leaders and make some kind of like deal. And I would say at the bare minimum, it's got to be a real two-state solution. At the bare minimum, all those settlements have to go. Every single last one. Because what was Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner? Donald Trump came with a peace plan to the Palestinians, and Jared Kushner comes in, and it's obviously that Jared Kushner is getting involved because of his ideological reasons. And Jared Kushner came up with a map that looks like something out of a Chutes and Ladders board game from when I was a kid. And if no self-respecting human being, Palestinian or otherwise, would ever accept a treaty like that. But if you could at least get a two-state solution, and you could at least get every single settlement out of there, you might have something. And then I'm going to, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to talk real quickly about Israel. Here's the other white pill. I know a lot of people know this, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people think it's hopeless. Israel's in a lot of trouble. Like, Israel is really in a lot of trouble because we've got this generational thing because conservatives have more babies than liberals in the West, so that's why we got this Gen Z tilt towards conservatism here in America, for example. We also have it in Israel big time, but even more so. Far more conservative. And you've got a bunch of religious Jews that are absolutely crazy, the Ben Gvir types, Jew Nazis with, Jewish hats on, who just want to basically commit genocide. And then you've got this other religious group, these ultra-Orthodox Jews that don't want to fight and may or may not even believe in the state of Israel. And then you've also got the young people who are secular are dwindling because their parents didn't have as many babies because secular people don't make as many kids. They're going to grow up in an Israel that is very different than their father's Israel or their grandfather's Israel. And they're going to be disenfranchised, and they're not going to want to fight. And you saw that in this kerfuffle. Possibly, the Mossad may have been promoting those protests to get rid of Bibi Netanyahu because they didn't like his coalition with the crazy Ben Gvir types, because Ben Gvir is like a crazy Rottweiler on a chain, dragging everybody deeper and deeper into Palestine and just stirring up the hornet's nest and pissing off the international community. So Israel's in trouble too.
Yeah.
So those two things, the election, Patrick Bet Davis trying to bring in people, trying to make a coalition between Muslims and conservatives, and Israel having a hard time now. I'm sorry I'm being a little long-winded, but I'm going somewhere with this. The sun, the stars, and the moon are aligning, possibly. And I'm really sorry I said that because somebody who's Salafi is going to be really upset with me.
You mean it figuratively, I know. But
Figuratively.
But so check this out. I'm sorry. Were you done with?
I am done. Yes, that was a bit long-winded. Thank you for letting me do that.
No. It's all your podcast today, bro. But there's something I know that you can articulate a lot better than I can. But does it really matter of how many people disagree with the existence of Palestine or the settlements or the powers that need Israel to exist are going to make it happen by making subtle changes to make people happy, but those things aren't going anywhere for the people that need Israel to, like, it would be cool if people can vote and then Israel would just be gone, right? But that's not really going to happen, right? I'm not undermining what you're saying either.
Well, that's why I'm saying I don't think Israel's going to go anywhere. I mean, first of all, they have 200 nuclear weapons, which they stole from us, but we don't ever talk about that. And they have a bunch of proprietary military technology, which they also stole from us and then sold to the Chinese. But we're not allowed to talk about that because that's anti-Semitism and Holocaust and blah, blah, blah. You hate the Jews. No, I don't hate the Jews.
That reminded me of South Park for some reason.
I also grew up on South Park. Well, that's probably why.
So, fundamentally, I know what you're... The Western powers, what they look at when they look at the Middle East or any countries all across the world, they look especially with the United States and the UK and France, who are some of the largest distributors of arms in the world. They look at these countries and they want to make sure that there is a sufficient amount of threat between them to make sure that they are buying weapons from them. Right?
Sure.
Because the weapons industry in the United States, the GDP is a ridiculous number. I think it's like 25%. A huge part of the GDP of the United States is dedicated to just simply selling weapons to various countries all across the world.
France and England too. Yeah.
So the military-industrial complex is dictating foreign policy or influencing foreign policy to the amount where they don't want to have full, long-lasting peace. Even if there is some measure of peace, there is going to be a kind of a lukewarm peace that gets people to just not go all-out war, but enough so that you're still buying weapons from us.
That's certainly a factor.
Because peace is not in the interest of your U.S. foreign policy.
That's certainly a factor, but one thing that I've learned as I've tried to in my journey to move away from paranoia and reactionaryism into logicalism and not being hyper-reactionary and living in a bunker surrounded by landmines, and just being a rational human being, I've come to learn that conspiracies are a factor, not the full story. The problem with conspiracy theories is that they're sort of like an all-encompassing view of things. I try not to look at it as like an all-encompassing.
This is not a conspiracy.
Well, no. That's what I'm saying. It's like hurricane season, right?
Yeah.
It's hurricane season. Yeah, it's military-industrial complex season. Sure, that's a factor. You know what I'm saying? Like some people like, oh, it's hopeless. We'll never win. We can't ever fight this force. The powers that be have made it so. Okay. Yes, that is a factor, but it's also a factor that Israel is realizing that the secular Jews that ran the show for many years, the Bibi Netanyahus and before,
that's true. Yeah.
They're realizing, oh my God, we've got the kosher Taliban and pulling us by the chain now, and we're going to be in so much trouble if we let these crazy people run the show. And so there's conversations in Israel about we got to pull back, we've got to stop. There's a lot of people speaking out. They're losing their democracy because, when you beat people up and steal their stuff, it affects how you run as a society. Surprise.
Yeah.
So, surprise. So Israel, I think Israel, most of the adults in the room are still in charge, and they're rational state actors.
I think you're right. I think there is that, but it's also happening with Saudi Arabia, Iran, and I think that all these regional actors are waking up to this idea that, hey, we've been buying weapons and arming ourselves, spending significant portions of our GDP on defense when we should have been building up infrastructure and using our money to look at life beyond oil.
Yeah.
So they're using China as a peace broker because they've realized, like, oh, it's not in the American interest for peace, for there to be peace between us, and they're using an outside. It was a slap in the face. It's huge embarrassment on the American government and on Western powers in general that China brokered a peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Yeah.
You know, and that shows that there is a type of awakening, especially now that they've also further taken steps to join BRICS, this new economic trade partnership, which is very much in its infancy, and yes, it's not much of a threat right now, but you know, in the future, that at least that's what their plan is, to become some kind of formidable coalition of countries that can challenge the U.S. dollar.
Well, regardless, sorry to cut you off, brother.
So go ahead.
So regardless of whether BRICS is a serious thing or not, I mean, I've been hearing about BRICS for 10, 20 years. I used to believe that the U.S. dollar is going to be dethroned by gold any day now, and that, you know, China would be reigning supreme. But China's got their own problems with demographics. They're peaking early, like that hot girl in high school that you used to know that was a cheerleader. You know, it's just not. This is not going to work very well for them. We're the schoolyard bully that still, you know, fantasizes about going to the NFL 30 years later. They're not doing very well. The reality is, even though, regardless of whether BRICS happens, regardless of who's taking over the world, Americans collectively, and, you know, in many people, I mean, the political establishment in Washington is not a unified body. There's hawks and there's doves and there's everybody in between. They're not one happy, big dysfunctional family. They're not all united. America overall collectively is just tired of running around the world. We're just tired of it. And so we're leaving the world, as Peter Zion points out.
Did you use a washing machine? Go ahead. Sheikh is marking his territory. Everyone, everyone in the chat, all 125 people of you.
Don't forget to redo your wudu, Sheikh.
Sheikh has left the room.
Should we hold on?
No, we keep going. The show must go on.
The show must go on, indeed. So China, China, I don't think is going to overtake the United States. I used to think that we were going to run into debt and go like the way of Argentina or Zimbabwe, but then I realized, I woke up one day and looked at Japan, which has a 300% debt to GDP ratio, and we're barely cracking like 110, 120. It's like, oh yeah, we got a long ways to go before we could really do this. And you know, it's not like there's not really a good alternative to the US dollar. We're just turning inward, and we're pulling our supply chains back to it, if not to America, then at least to like Mexico. Like, we're pulling out of the world. So Israel is also on the chopping block, because psychologically, regardless of whether we give that much money to Israel or not, like, people are just tired of it. Everybody, I'm telling you, conservatives that I talk to in my circles, I feel it intuitively in my bones. I talk to them and they're like, man, I can't believe you're saying all this stuff about Israel. I wish I could say it too, but I'm just like Ukraine, just like Afghanistan, just like Iraq, it's like these stupid neoconservative wars in the Middle East. It's about to get dropped like a hot potato. And when it happens, people are going to be like, what? What? I thought America and Israel forever, bro. I thought we're BFS forever until the ages of ages. Like, nope. People are just going to get tired of it. Because in order to have a true America First foreign policy, which I am an America First, not Nick Fuentes. I'm not Fuentes. But in order to have a true America First foreign policy, the reality is Israel has been dragging us into a lot of their nonsense. And we cannot be friends with Israel at the level that we are as Americans, not as Muslims, but as Americans, and also have an America First foreign policy. Those things are not compatible. Something's got to give.
Something's got to give, but also, I think the United States is also being stretched too thin across the world, and I think what's happening is that they're falling victim to what every empire in the past has fallen into as victim. Their eyes became bigger than their stomachs. And in order to maintain this world hegemony and their influence over all of the world, they've allowed China to start making all kinds of deals with them in South America, for example.
China and other places, yeah.
China's now investing heavily in South America and Africa, and American eyes are off of that because they just don't have the resources to manage all these different countries and the various politics within. Russia's already has its the paramilitary arm that they've been using. I'm trying to remember the name. Prigozhin's
the
group,
thing. Wagner.
Yeah, Wagner.
Wagner, yeah.
Wagner is being used in Africa to, maintain their leaders over there, the leaders that are working in the interests of the Russian government, etc. So I think people smell blood in the water with America losing its grip on the world. It's certainly embarrassing itself when Saudi Arabia and other countries are making moves without its consent. In the past, all this stuff would have to go through the United States first. Even and we see this example. We're still seeing. It's not like America's lost total grip of it. We saw that with what Pakistan did with Imran Khan. They fully. The Intercept disclosed documents where America clearly gave instructions explicitly saying that, hey, we don't want this guy around anymore. They gave directions to the Pakistanis to get rid of this guy. We don't care about your democracy. Get rid of this guy because why? He's dealing with the Russians. He wants to make deals with the Russians. And I saw it on the right when I saw Imran Khan saying that he's landing in Russia. I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing? You don't know what you're doing right now. How did you get the green light to do this? And he's saying that he consulted with the Pakistani intelligence, the ISI, and said that he made that move on their behest, with their green light. If that is indeed true, then someone within their state apparatus is working actively against them, because that was such a dumb move, because the United States will be incredibly pissed off by you working with the Russians when they're actively trying to squeeze the Russians, and with the Ukraine conflict. So they gave the directions to get rid of him. Now he's in prison based on frivolous charges of accepting state bribes or foreign bribes. And now we are also seeing that the Pakistani government, the Intercept just disclosed that they got this huge IMF loan that bails out their economy because they're providing these munitions and stuff to Ukraine. America still, it's not like it's lost complete grip of the world. There are chumps like the Pakistanis who are still acting and taking orders from them. And Henry Kissinger said it best. He said it, to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous. To be a friend is fatal. Yeah,
and I would put it this way, just in a couple sentences. Rome was not built in a day, and it sure as heck didn't collapse overnight. It collapsed, we're like at the beginning stages of the empire collapse.
We
and it's
used
not
the
even
Ottoman Empire as a reference here on this podcast.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know you're...
The Ottoman Empire was not built in a day, and it did not collapse overnight. I stand corrected.
All right. Yeah. So, yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, the Ottomans... well, actually, it collapsed overnight.
It kind of did collapse overnight. See, the British... that's why I'm saying it's not quite one from... Yeah. Roman Empire actually... the western half collapsed slowly over a couple centuries. First, they had they went from Republic failed, and it kind of like right now.
Yeah.
And then they went through a series of Caesars, and then the western, cue that song from MGMT, Policeman, and then it's like, and then it's like they fell apart gradually, and you see the montage of them failing over a century or two. And then the eastern half of the Roman Empire carried on for a day or two, until 1453.
Yeah.
Technically. So here, that which I want to switch gears to my next white pill. You ready for my next white pill? Okay.
Cool.
So now that we're talking about America being like Roman Empire and collapsing slowly, because Rome wasn't built in a day and it didn't collapse overnight, I want to bring up my next white pill. Bring hope to the Muslims, America, and the non-Muslims sitting on the fence listening to this podcast. Non-Muslims who are just hopeless. I agree with Daniel Haqiqatjou. America is very possibly going to be...
You're canceled, bro.
What?
Done.
Haqiqatjou! I want to be on your show. Look what they did to me, bro.
That's our show for this evening.
Look what I did.
We'll see y'all next time.
Look what I did for you, bro. I put myself in
Cue the credits.
Oh, man. So, Haqiqatjou, DH, you know, I agree with them that America is about to become a Muslim country, inshallah, based on trends. Hear me out. So, look at what happened in the first few centuries AD of the Western Roman Empire. Look at what happened. You know what I'm saying?
Wait, he said that this is going to be a Muslim country?
He says it could be, and I agree with him. I'm going to tell you why.
Why?
I'm going to tell you why. So how did Christianity enter the Roman Empire? It happened because the Romans were brutally occupying Palestine and brutally oppressing and beating up the Jews. And then Prophet Isa came along and gave a message, which you could say was part of Allah Almighty's ultimate plan, because the Romans had really good interstate back in the Dizay for the time period. And that message spread throughout the empire like wildfire. So I'm thinking about this passage in the New Testament. I can't remember what it was, but it was in the New Testament where Prophet Isa, peace be upon him, is being visited by a Roman centurion, and the Roman centurion occupying Palestine at the time goes, Isa, please heal one of my soldiers. And Prophet Isa, according to the New Testament, and of course we don't know if that's actually accurate or not, because, you know, stuff in the New Testament is a little spotty sometimes. According to the story, which could just be allegorical, could just be metaphorical, or could just be an example of stuff that might have happened at the time. Isa goes to the Prophet Isa, peace be upon him, goes to the soldier and says, "Yep, your soldiers can already be healed." Or I'm sorry, the Roman centurion says, "No, just pray for them, and I know that they're already going to be healed." And Prophet Isa, peace be upon him, in the New Testament, whether that's true or not, whether the story is true or not, it could just be allegorical, metaphorical, says, "Never have I seen such faith in the land of Israel." And the Roman centurion goes off along his way. Well, what did that Roman centurion do? He came back to the empire and told the story. What did the business people who were Jews that had accepted the teachings of Prophet Isa, peace be upon him, do when they went into the Roman Empire? They spread the story. And unfortunately, the story got mixed in with Roman paganism. We know how that went down. But that's how Roman Empire became Christian. And before the message of Prophet Isa, peace be upon him, started getting spread, people were already starting to become disillusioned with the machine. And people were starting to become disillusioned with the system. And there were these sort of philosophical communities in ancient Rome of people who were like talking to philosophers, kind of like we would want to hang out with sheikhs, which is why I'm doing Seeker's Guidance, which is a pretty awesome thing right now, because I'm dumb and I have to repeat the quizzes a lot. But anyways, so yeah. Yeah, so there was all this preparation going on where people were like, something's not right. This is going on right now in America with things like the Patrick Bet Davis podcast. This is going on right now in America with people doing things like ayahuasca and DMT, trying to find meaning and purpose. This is going on right now with the Jordan Peterson stuff, the Jordan Peterson movement, the philosophical Christianity, the 12 Rules for Life. It's a philosophical community. It's not a religious community. It's a philosophical, religious kind of conglomeration of things. This is going on on YouTube with people like Anti.Prophet, who I pay attention to. And for those of you who don't know who Anti.Prophet is, he is an American expat who lives in Bali, who wears this weird face mask and looks like Spider-Man from an alternate universe, and he pontificates about philosophical, political, cultural, spiritual, religious things.
Why does he wear the mask?
Because he's a weirdo and he's trying to get views, just like I'm a weirdo wearing this
No,
Bob
but
t-shirt.
do we know his real name though?
No, but he's an American expat.
He's the guy that wears that really shiny face thing.
the white thing with the chiclets.
Oh,
Looks like,
Yeah, I think I remember seeing
Yeah.
this guy. I don't take those kind of people seriously because I feel it's not that what they're saying is not serious. It might be really important, but I don't feel like they're putting anything on the line, and I don't like that. I feel like
They're
when
trying
you
to be
have
for V for Vendetta type thing, you know?
No, I feel
That's why
like
they think
when
they're
you
gonna be
want to bring
influential.
change seriously, you have to put a name. You have to put yourself on the line. You can't just be bringing revolution without any risk to you, or any true revolutionary in the past human history. Their identities have always been known. They are people who bring a vision to their people. They bring a set of rules and principles that they feel society should live by, and they bring change that way. But go ahead.
That's not really what I'm trying to get at, though.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but that's not really the crux of what I'm getting at. The crux of the matter here is that there's this preparation going on in the Western culture, psyche, soul of people realizing, man, our system is completely jacked. It's messed up. And trying to find, the old religion, like for the Romans, it was the old pagan religion, stopped making sense, and people find these philosophical communities. And people in America are turning to things like DMT or Jordan Peterson or ayahuasca or atheism or spiritualism or Sam Harris's overpriced meditation app on iTunes, There's all kinds of stuff. Yoga, jiu-jitsu. I'm saying it. I said jiu-jitsu. Sorry, jiu-jitsu friends back in Jakarta. You know what I mean. But yeah, people are like.
Well, what's the common theme in that, though? You're absolutely 100% right. Well, what's the theme in that? You're seeing a trend within society where many people are noticing, hey, we need rigidity. We need rules.
Yes.
We need discipline.
Yeah.
We need these things because this is what makes society keep moving forward. And what's happening right now with liberalism is that, the sky's the limit with where your pleasures are and what restricts your happiness. You should, whatever's restricting that, remove that veil off of that. And people are like Patrick did, Bet David, Jordan Peterson, etc. They're all seeing that, hey, what secular liberalism has brought to Western society is pure evil.
And that's where we come in with YouTube, the internet, and the comment section. With taking our machines and fighting and getting comments and everything. We're like, yeah, we're ready to fight. We got something. Hey, we got something for you. And people are starting to wake up to the message. And it's true. And this is exactly what happened in the Roman Empire with Christianity. Like, man, people are willing to die in the Colosseum for their faith? Wow. And then people are looking at Muslims and they're like, man, people are willing to go to jail and suffer for Islam? Like you could argue Muhammad Ali kind of did by willing to stand by his principles. And people are going, man, these Muslims, they don't bow down to the rainbow Nazis? Wow. There's a similar sort of environment that's just sort of ripe.
Brewing.
It's brewing. Yeah, it's a similar thing. And then I first realized that when
Can you bring the microphone
Oh,
closer
sorry.
to your face? Yeah.
I first realized this when I realized, why am I in Indonesia?
Huh.
Well, it's because it's cheaper to live there. And, the government said, Harry, you're broken beyond repair. Here's a check for such and such amount of money every month. And I realized, well, I can't afford to live in the country I fought for because everything's so expensive now. One of the things you saw towards the end of the Roman Empire before Christianity came along is you saw a lot of Roman centurions would take their pension after 20 years in the military in the Roman legions and be like, they come back to Rome and they're like, wow, this is whack. This is not the Rome I remember from being a kid, and everything's weird and I don't relate to people. And they would literally take their pensions and move outside of the empire.
I see.
There's a huge movement of people like prior military people, conservatives, liberals, people that are just disaffected with the system, independents, whatever. People moving outside of the system, doing things like this guy, Anti.Profit, would do, living outside the system. And then there's a lot of immigrants coming in here. We don't really have control of our borders, just like they didn't really have control of theirs. They just make a pile of cash and they pop smoke and despair. So that is another indicator. Why? Because there's massive wealth inequality and wealth consolidation, and everything's gunked up. It's not really a free market system. It used to be in the early Roman Empire that you worked hard, you lived honorably, you follow the rules, you get rewarded. It used to be in America. Hey, what is in America? It used to be you work hard, you live honorably, you fight for the country, you come home, you get your 50 acres and a meal and a house and a beautiful woman and the kids and the whole 9 yards. People are disenfranchised now, just as people were disenfranchised back then. It's ripe for change.
Don't you see that the economic system? Not when I talk about capitalism, I'm not against free market.
Right.
I'm not talking about the free market. When I talk about the problems within capitalism, I'm talking about the problems that are related to capitalism wanting to maximize off of the infinite number of needs and wants and desires that the human being has. Do you see the problem that when you have a state that is built on capitalistic principles, where it's the system is moving forward, the gears of the system are relying on you maximizing your pleasure, you as the individual, because that's how capitalism views the world, as the individual and his needs and desires first, then it expands to a family unit, etc., all the way to wider society, right? So when its fundamental principles are looking at man being his own God, that his needs matter, his happiness is equal to the next pleasure he gets,
Right.
by buying and selling
Consuming,
things.
hyperconsumption.
Don't you see how the fundamental nature of Western society is built on this agreement with liberalism to have unrestricted access to its pleasure, to whatever is bringing happiness and pleasure to your society,
Right.
without the rules and restrictions of religion being involved.
And authority, yeah.
Yeah. Free markets without philosophical religious constraint of some kind is extremely dangerous. So this is where I would kind of agree and disagree with people like DH. DH just thinks that classical liberalism is bad news and liberalism is bad, period. I would argue it was not liberalism that invaded Iraq. It was philosophy, which pretends to be the vanguard of promoting liberalism abroad. But if you look at the writings of the, founding fathers and the way the country was set up, we were never supposed to go run around the world and force democracy and freedom at gunpoint. That was never what we were supposed to do. That's not. And the founding fathers, even though many of them were deists and Freemasons, they still recognized and respected Jesus, peace be upon him. They still, for example, Thomas Jefferson rewrote the Bible.
Yeah.
And it almost looks like kind of sort of like the Muslim understanding of Jesus. All kind of sort of, not really, but kind of sort of. He was kind of tracking in that direction a little bit.
But do you see the problem with the fundamental premise that people like him are saying that, Islam is ripe for Western society? Yes, it is. There is Islam does provide the antidote to the problems that Western society has.
Yeah.
But it requires a radical shift in how these principles related to economics are laid out, where we were just talking about before the show, we were talking about how companies just carry on debt, right? We were talking about how we were eating at a restaurant, we were talking about how restaurants in the beginning, when they first start out, they have the best service, best food, everything is amazing, and they're carrying on a lot of debt to muscle out the competition. That's how business is structured in the States now, where companies like Home Depot, when they first come up, they have every amenity available to the customer, 5 people ready to greet you, no questions asked when you're returning stuff, and then they incur that debt where they muscle out everyone, and then they start after a year, 2 years, eventually as the competition dwindles, they start scaling down on that fat that they were offering customers, and they start bringing out they just start scaling down, and their quality goes back to what was the default to begin with. Now you're seeing the same with the streaming services, Netflix, Amazon. All of them are now pushing out ads, and you're like, wait, your whole purpose or existence was to push out network television and its advertisements, and now you guys are going back to ads. And so what you found out was that, and those who were paying attention to Netflix when they were going up, was that every executive in the industry was saying that they don't have any profit model. They're just taking on debt.
Right.
And they're just muscling out competition and getting content and pushing people out. And now you're seeing that we have to start paying this off.
Right.
So now they're bringing all these commercials and stuff. And Amazon's also just announced recently that they're putting in commercials as well for their subscribers.
So the early Sahaba, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the early Sahaba were the first Muslims in a world that was topsy-turvy, where people would literally bury their baby daughters alive in the sand. And the early Sahaba, they weren't all sparkly clean people when they first became Muslims. Some of them were prostitutes, tax collectors, bounty hunters, basically all the scenes of Tatooine from Star Wars. Yeah, I mean, that was basically, I mean, it was a rough, that was a rough place. Way rougher than America and the Midwest in 2023. A lot scarier, you know. And yet, they didn't just go, boom, they're Muslims. Ashhadu alla la ilaha illallah Muhammad abduhu rasulullah, and all of a sudden I'm a Muslim. That's not what happened. It was gradual in stages. They gave up drinking a little bit, piece by piece. First they stopped drinking just so they could pray, and then they gradually gave up drinking altogether. Before I became Muslim, I used to drink like a fish tank. I mean, I'm sure that's really surprising to you that I would
not at all.
used to be an alcoholic. But, you know, I gave up drinking gradually, and then suddenly, kind of like Ernest Hemingway went bankrupt, gradually and suddenly. And so, you know, I actually gave up drinking before I became Muslim, like 2 years before I became Muslim. Yeah.
Wow.
So, that's what I'm saying. So a lot of people, when they hear creeping Sharia,
what will speed that up though?
What will
speed up our creeping Sharia into Western say?
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I'm not sure we want to speed it up.
Why?
Oh, okay. I'll tell you why. Because I wanted to be dramatic effect. Okay, I wanted y'all to hang on to your seats a little bit here. Now y'all doing it. Now y'all paying attention. All right, okay. So here's why. So when I became Christian, I was just so happy to find God. And, you know, I'm going to push back a little bit on some people. I do think while the Trinity is wrong, and obviously it's a pagan concept, I still believe it fundamentally. The Christian God is still fundamentally Allah Almighty. It's just they're defining it wrong.
Yeah.
But I mean, the love of God that I felt in the church, in a liturgy, divine Orthodox liturgy, was the same thing I can feel in Ramadan when we're praying a bunch. It's the same divine God, absolutely. But I was just so happy to find God that I didn't really think through things as a teenager. And I was so happy to like have an opportunity to get out of the house with my Jew Nazi stepfather that I was like, man, I'm great. I can like go to the church and go with these people and who are also converts like me. This is great and it's awesome. And I just didn't really think the whole concept of the Trinity. You know, it's like falling in love with this girl when you're not ready to get married, and you get married and you're like, oh, well, I didn't know what I was getting into.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, people are pulling knives on each other, and like there's crying babies everywhere, and bills are piling up, and there's that collector's knocking at the door. You know, it's like, oh, I did not know what I was getting into. And so when I became Muslim, first of all, when I left Christianity, it was really disillusioning, and I think Muslims don't understand that about Christians when we leave the faith. It's like really sad to learn that the Trinity isn't real. I try to explain to Muslims, no, you don't understand. It's like finding out that Jesus isn't really God and he's not your best friend that you can just call up like whenever. It's really sad. How is it sad, brother? What are you talking about? It's like Christmas being canceled forever. Brother Henry, what does Christmas mean to me? I do not understand this Christmas. We are Muslims. We don't understand Christmas. Okay. It's like realizing that my parents getting divorced was sad and existentially devastating. Me going through a divorce was bad. Me realizing that Iraq was a lie after I got blown up and had to deal with all that crud for a year and all the insane things that happened. My friend, the people I knew died for a stupid reason. That was devastating and nihilistic. Great, yeah. Finding out that the Trinity wasn't real and that Jesus wasn't really God was worse than that.
Wow.
Worse than all that. So, like, people are like, on my comment section, like, oh, how come these Christians, they're so stupid, Harry? You figured it out. How come they're so stupid? And it's like, it's not that they're stupid. It is a hard thing to give up. Like Rabbi Tovia Singer, who's a Jewish guy who talks about these issues, like, Jesus is like the best friend that you can call up whenever, and he's never going to abandon you. That's a hard thing to give up. It's hard to explain. So, I mean, when I decided to look into Islam, I was kind of like a guy who got out of a failed relationship and was like, I don't know, do I want to get married again? I don't know if I want to do this. I just go to my friends and be like, I'm never getting married again. And so I'd talk to people about religion and politics, and like Islam would come like, I don't want to go through this again. No, Bill, you don't understand how tribalistic those people are. Let me ask them about what the difference between Sunni and Shiite is. It's not fun. And so it took a while for me to get psychologically ready. And so that's why I spent so much time researching and looking into all the different positions and all the different the range of opinions and learning different things about Islam before I took the plunge. It was a multi-year process.
That makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so steady in what I do. And so what I encourage Muslims, especially in the Dawah scene, is to stop going around and having these like, oh, somebody found Allah and they're ready to take their Shahada, and then we're all like, oh, he's taking a Shahada, oh, wow. And it's like, does he know what the 5 pillars of Islam are? Does he know the difference between a hadith and an ayah in the Quran? Not that I'm a magical, amazing, super awesome scholar of fiqh, because I'm not. By any stretch of the imagination, I'm not. But I can at least tell you those things. Does this person who wants to become Muslim understand that you really do need to pray 5 times a day unless you're traveling, and then you can pray 3 times depending on what madhab you're in or something like that? Do they understand that? Do they understand that they're going to have to give up gambling, prostitution, smoking weed recreationally, drinking, sex outside of marriage, like all this stuff? Do they realize they're going to have to, if you're a man, like not have women friends anymore? Do you realize that you're not allowed to even shake hands with women? Like a lot of Muslims come into this like just, oh, I'm so happy I found Islam, and they don't really know what they're getting into.
So you want to make sure they know what they're signing up for.
Yeah, because I didn't know what I was signing up for when I went to Iraq, and I didn't know what I was signing up for when I became Christian. And you think the Muslim world's bad with their tribal ethnic stuff? Eastern Orthodox worse.
Dude, that's actually really, really interesting. But why should the process not be sped up though?
It can be sped up if people know what they're getting into. In other words, they can be. So, like when I got married a second time, and this is why I love Salafis and I don't hate on Team Salafi, even though I'm not a Salafi. Salafi people out in Jakarta. Shout out to the Salafis out in Jakarta. They helped me get ready to go through Taruf, because I
help you get ready to go
through Taruf.
What's Taruf?
Process of meeting a Muslim lady and getting married.
Oh, Ta'aruf. Yes. I'm sorry.
Ta'aruf. Ta'aruf, Muslims.
No, I thought it was
he does this to me all the time here.
No, dude, I actually was I thought it was a different word. I didn't know that he was referring to that. When he explained to me the meaning, then I got what he was trying to say.
Brandon, were they this mean to you, man?
No, dude.
He probably
this is what he does to us all the time here.
People rarely use that word. Look, dude, I wasn't trying to.
I'm just kidding.
I was trying to understand what you were trying to say, and I was like, oh, that's what he means. So I was thinking it was something else, like a tariqa or something, But anyways, yeah.
Like Nashbandi.
Yeah. But anyways, so the
that's hilarious.
So the Jakarta helped you out.
The Salafis in Jakarta. Shout out to the Salafis in East Jakarta. I was going through divorce. I was trying to settle it, and I was just there, and I was rotating in and out on tourist visas, not really knowing what to do, trying to get my ex-wife to sign the divorce papers, and so I started hanging around with some Salafis because these Salafis are kind of cool,
Yeah,
they're all
totally.
right dudes. I thought the media says that these are bad people. The media says that conservative white people like me are terrible people. So maybe the Salafis aren't that bad. So I was sitting out with the Salafis, and they start getting me ready for Taruf, and they hooked me up with this dude who's like a Taruf agent. Yeah, I wrote a resume, everything, and then I met my wife by the Mac Daddy, the matchmaker.
Oh,
Matchmaker, making a match. That guy. He took my wife's resume, a pile of other resumes with other women. I hate to say binders full of women like Romney, but it's kind of like that. Like, they actually are binders full of women in the resumes, and I got my resume in a binder, and everybody's being hey, I want to meet so-and-so. Oh, I want to meet so-and-so. And then the agent brings us together to a place, in this case, my wife and I met in a mall, and there were 4 other women ahead of my wife, and I was just like, nope, maybe. Ooh, I like you. And then she's like, oh, you're crazy. I don't want you. And then I met my wife, Amelia, and we hit off. It was great. And then after that meeting, I went to go meet Amelia's family immediately. Okay, so why am I bringing this? That was a sped up process of about 6 months before we got married. And in that process, we spent a lot of time interviewing each other, getting to know each other, with our families present. My friends met her, interviewed her, and vice versa. It was a sped up process. You're saying, getting back to what we're saying, we got a little traffic here, but why not speed up the process? If you can speed up the process and cover all the things that need to be covered, that's one thing.
I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying?
That was a great analogy, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Shake. But if you can't speed up the process, but if you speed up the process just to get views and clicks, you're going to have what happened to Brother Sneako. And
Sneako is a YouTuber, for those who don't know.
Now a Rumbler, right?
Yeah, Rumbler. I don't know what he is, but he's someone who kind of jumped on Islam, the Islam bandwagon. Became Muslim after Andrew Tate. I think just a few months after Andrew became Muslim. He also jumped on the train, and now he's waffling back and forth and saying that you guys are this is just too much for me. Every time I'm doing something, my comment section is saying that haram. This is
Right. Yes.
Welcome to the Muslim world, Sneako.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
So he's crying big fat tears of
regret. Confusion.
I mean,
Allah help him overcome it. I mean.
Well, I mean, but
did he claim that he left Islam or no?
He hasn't said it, but he's saying that he doesn't want to. No. He's saying he's kind of on the verge of leaving.
Allah maintain his Islam. Sneako stay Muslim, brother.
And I don't pass judgment on because
we all go through it.
We all go through that, yeah. But
everyone has to go through a test, man.
And we all do. But that's the point. If you don't want to be in a situation like poor Brother Sneako, you got no. I'm serious. You gotta know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not gonna work. I'm gonna make this argument. I might get in trouble because I'm not a scholar. I can't make this argument.
Do it.
Okay, I'm doing it anyway. I'll make this argument. The Quran says,
as long as it's not blasphemous, but
it's not blasphemous.
Yeah.
The Quran says there is no compulsion in religion.
Yeah.
Okay. If you are trying to push somebody into, please take your shot. Are you ready to take your shot right now in front of all these people? I'm going to make this argument. Even if you do it with the best of intentions, you're kind of sort of compelling people because you want the emotional kick out of it. And the clicks and the views, possibly. I can't pass judgment on what's going on in people's heads. I'm not powerful like that. But I really, in light of how many people come to Islam, and Patrick Bet Davis said this on the stats on his thing. A lot for every person that comes in, at least one person comes out sometimes. So let's be careful about what we're getting into.
Yeah, I mean, there's that problem, where you are kind of in that, what's it called, Shahada business, where you're just. I was in it when I was a teenager, though. I was 19 years old. I gave 3 Shahadas to these people I met online. I never followed up on them. Yeah. I never said, hey, how are you doing, Harry? You learning how to do the ibadah or anything? I was just happy, like, oh, I got, you know, they're like a tally on my list, like, oh, got you, and
Yeah.
now I got my salvation. Hope you guys figure it out, you know. And that was obviously, you know, I'm 19, 20 years old, and just learning Islam and using everything I'm learning to get people to accept Islam, and deeply regret that. But what I'm thinking about is the difficulty of having a state apparatus pushing people towards away from religion, away from restriction, where you're directly opposed to a belief system that says restrict what your nafs is asking for. These are two polar opposites that are happening. One system, and again, when I say capitalism, I'm not talking about the free market, because there's people who jump on, you want communism? No.
I think the free market for is corporatism.
It's more than that. Corporatism,
Okay.
capitalism. We're talking about the fundamental, the first principles, the fundamental truths that how capitalism formed its basis of theory on how they understood human beings as individuals, as people who have unlimited needs, that society can work towards providing these, and their man will achieve happiness through purchasing and buying things and goods and services to maximize his happiness. And no, scarcity is a different concept, but
Look, he has to conduct himself as if something's scarce.
yeah.
A
Right?
bottomless
Even though it's
black
not.
hole of needs.
So it's
Yes.
be the bottomless black hole of needs that you have to keep making sure that there's sufficient amount of goods and services available to satisfy him
Yes.
and his desires. Whereas Islam is not, its fundamental premises, that's not how it understands man. Yes, man has needs, desires, and stuff, but it also needs to restrict these things.
Yes.
And man needs to practice restraint, and
That's what Ramadan's for.
there's all these, you know, spiritual things that are building you up so that you can fight against these things.
Within economic policy, within foreign policy, within judicial policy,
Yeah.
within economic policy, within just acts of worship itself, everything has this embedding of taqwa, right?
Taqwa.
Everything, even though you're studying fiqh, even though it seems very dry at times, it's all, there's this underbelly of taqwa constantly, right?
Harry, think about like when you study the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, when he's preaching to the Meccan society, it wasn't much to give up from the Meccan's point of view in giving him the status,
Right.
of being a prophet. It was the societal change that he was causing that freaked them out.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had their own, like, a deep state that was operating cheating scales and all these different things that we learn about when we're learning
In
about
the Quran directly,
in the Quran. But there's this whole apparatus that he's threatening. It wasn't that they could have easily said, "Hey, you know what? They offered him.
Yeah.
You could be the head of state.
Yeah.
We'll give you the best woman. We'll make you the head of state. We'll make you, we'll give you everything you want. Just let us do our business.
Right.
You know, how we want to do it, and don't meddle in those things." And every kind of attempt that the various tribes all across Arabia offered him, the Prophet rejected all of them. He wanted pure, true change where the apparatus, the wheels
Right.
of government were changed.
So that's why I'm saying just trying to go around and get everybody to take their Shahada right now is not a good solution. And that's why I'm saying it's going to take a while. And then you factor in, like, look, the early Muslim societies, as I found from reading A World Without Islam by, what's his name?
Let's just look it up. For him.
And it's a really good book written by,
that's okay.
former CIA analyst. What's his name?
A World Without Islam.
Actually, I saw it in the Yogyakarta, Indonesia airport on the way back from visiting Yogyakarta, Indonesia.
Graham Fuller.
Graham Fuller! That's him, CIA guy. And what he pointed out, that was a book I read a few years before I became Muslim, and that was kind of like one of the things that really turned the wheels in my head. One of the things he said is the whole Islam conquered by the sword, he really answered that question well in this book. He says, Islam conquered by the sword, I'm paraphrasing, but they left everyone alone, basically. Islam gradually seeped into the societies that they conquered. They didn't force people. They didn't convert by the sword. They had, carried on some principles from the Constitution of Medina, which basically allowed the Christians and the Jews to have their own thing going on. And they carried on that practice. And that's why Islam spread so quickly, because Islam didn't really seep in quickly, but it spread quickly. Because people were like, oh, wow, these guys are super cool, and they're nice, and they got, like, clean, they got good values. I just got to pay this teeny tiny little jizya, and you're going to protect me from the Byzantines?
Yeah.
And the Persians? Oh, this gangster, I'll take this. You're going to leave me alone?
Yeah.
You're going to let me continue to be a Christian or whatever I'm doing, and that's cool. The Christians in Egypt, the Coptics, continue to exist today because their churches, as it stands, continue to exist today because of Muslim rule.
Yeah.
Had they been left subjugated under Byzantine rule, they would have been forced at gunpoint to accept all the councils of Nicaea and submit to Constantinople. Islam protected them to do their thing.
Don't mess with the monks. Don't bother the monks. The Prophet's policy. Umar radiallahu anh carried it through very well. Everybody knows these stories about Umar radiallahu anh not intentionally praying in the church in Jerusalem. Right. But look, there's a few things to be said, and I'll talk about a little bit of the conversion and speed conversion.
Sure.
Rasulullah mandated and made sure that Christians were allowed to deal and Jews were allowed to deal with their own court rules and proceedings as amongst themselves.
Right.
And that's going to be protected, right? Nobody really allowed, especially then, for something like that to happen, right? So that's one of the reasons why in Islam, Christianity had its own type of flourishing, but it was a different type of flourishing under the supervision of Islam, which is very weird to say in its own way, but it's very amazing at the same time, right? But I don't think, as far as conversions, when these people are referring to America being Muslim, I don't think they're actually referring to everybody becoming Muslim. It's a sympathizing of Muslim, because that's what ended up happening, right? Like after what the neocons actually had a problem with, the Robert Spencers had a problem with. Why are we bending over backward for Muslims? Why are we being so accommodating to these people when they're inherently like this and like this and like this and barbaric and whatever the case is?
Right.
Yes, does that pave the way for more people to become Muslim? Yes. Does that pave the way for politicians somehow to squeeze into that arena? Of course it does, right? But I think what people are erroneously afraid of is that there's going to be a connection of Muslims to the Muslim world within America, which will weaken America.
It's calm, baby. It's coming. Just wait.
In the future, right? Because I don't. Yeah, it's cool if a lot of people convert. That's awesome, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what the main fear is. I think it's that reckoning of that connection that's being built between Muslims not feeling 100% American, and that equating patriotism and them not being patriotic. And why is there now a movement amongst them that they're being in America, being American, benefiting American, but when it comes to their religion, America means nothing to them.
Well, okay, we'll get back to that. As somebody who used to be on the other side of the fence,
yes, sir.
It's not one or the other, it's both. Very much it's both. Like, that was the thing that used to keep me not gnawing up at night, seeing getting into a taxi cab with some dude from Pakistan, thinking this guy's the fifth columnist, and also thinking like, this guy's gonna have more kids than my kids are gonna have, and it's gonna be over. That it's both.
What did you think of that argument, by the way, when they were talking about more kids? PBD was talking about having more children and all that. How much of an issue do you think? How much of a scare is that actually for people?
It's a big.
Or were they nitpicking?
Oh, in the United States, it's not as big of a scare because the United States, for all the criticisms that people like DH have of the current liberal system that we have here, the classical liberal, which should have been a classical liberal, it's morphed into something else. I wouldn't say the security state is anything like what the classical liberals intended, like the founding fathers. I'm pretty sure they would be upset with this government. But this system, people say, well, I want to live under Sharia law right now. okay, yes, of course. We want to live under Sharia law, or we'd want to live under Khalifa, or of course, ideally, we want to live be like the Sahaba and live with our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Ideally, under his leadership. But that's not the world we live in. The Constitution is not, whatever you want to say about classical liberalism that created this Constitution, it's not that bad of a deal.
It's not the Constitution again.
It's not.
It's not the Constitution. Though. It's the economic system that got adopted by the American democratic system.
But he's making a point though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on a second. If you look at what it's like to be a Muslim in America, if you're willing to fight and have discipline, this is a good place to live. And you're not going to get caught up in your willing to take care of your family, because there's still an element of conservative Christians homeschooling and everything like that. There's enough of a resource for you to stand up. There's enough freedom here that you can set up your own thing here and insulate yourself from the nonsense in America. People in France cannot do that. Their system doesn't allow them to do that. So this system, America, is very unique in world history and in Western society of being able to take people from everywhere and assimilate them in a generation or two. Everywhere that Islam has gone around the world in Islamic history, it's always with fiqh and with, consensus of Islamic jurisprudence and other things. Is somebody saying bad things about
No, I actually got to leave.
I'm sorry, Sheikh.
No, I don't want to cut you off. I'm going to come around there and give you a hug. I'm going to leave, but I'm going to call you tonight, inshallah.
Awesome.
All right. Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. The brother came from out of town. I got to show him some love.
All right. Awesome.
Sorry about this. I just realized it's almost 6:30, bro.
Oh, well, we're having a good chit-chat here.
Yeah, man. No, you guys continue. You guys carry on. All right. But Jazakallah khairan. I appreciate the barefoot too, my man. That was really awesome seeing you. I'm going to call you tonight, inshallah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch with the group.
I'm super awesome.
Yeah.
Where are we?
Go for it. Here.
All right.
R.I.P. Sheikh.
So everywhere that Islam has ever gone, it's always been able to, Sharia is not this hard, rigid code. It's the way. And there are people who are way smarter than me who are scholars and people who can understand fiqh and all that and issue fatwas that can work with the system they got. In Orthodox Christianity, when I was an Orthodox Christian, the word for this sort of adaptation was economia. We give you an allowance. Ideally, you should be doing X, Y, and Z thing, but you can do A, B, and C thing in lieu of this. You're supposed to pray 5 times a day. But if you're traveling, you can pray for 3. So there's certain things that people can do scholastically way beyond my skill set. Again, this is, I'm not a scholar. I'm not a sheikh. America, we need more scholarship in America for Americans, if that makes sense. People to really sift through these issues. Jonathan A.C. Brown, I appreciate what he did. That was his book, Misquoting Muhammad. That was another book that really brought me to Islam. And he gets a lot of criticism because he's seen as too liberal. And I think he's too liberal in some things. But I appreciate what the man was trying to do. He, like me, like many other skeptical people, and I'm not a scholar at his level, I'm just a skeptic. We look at Islam as what's real in here? What's this? What's the real Islam? There's one group of Muslims saying this, there's one group of Muslims saying this. Is this right? Is this wrong? What is it? He came in there and he tried to intellectually, from an outsider point of view, look at it objectively, look at everything objectively. And he realized that Islam has a problem of context in the year 2023, and we don't understand. It's a contextual problem. I understand what he was trying to say by this, but it was the wrong word. I think is the wrong word, in my opinion. He said Islam needs a sort of recontextualization for 2023. And he said that because we need to put it in the proper context of 2023. But he also said, I don't want to misquote him or make him look like a bad guy. He wanted to be really clear. He didn't want to reinvent the wheel also. He wasn't trying to turn Islam into something that it wasn't. I think in light of some of the things that DH has rightfully called out, with some of the liberal imams kind of going too far to the left, going a little bit off the rails, I think maybe the word recontextualization isn't the right word either. I would just say Islam does not need a reformation like people like Charlie Kirk are calling for, or some Muslims are calling for. A lot of Muslims are calling for a reformation. Well, we saw what happened with Europe, how that went. And we're seeing what happens as a result afterwards down the line with these liberal churches that don't really believe anything. So Islam does not need a reformation. It needs more scholarship. A lot more scholarship. So that people can really sift through things in detail for America in an American situation.
I would add, I think you're right. I would add that it needs that, but not just scholarship, but a certain type of scholarship.
Yes.
Scholarship that doesn't just doesn't stick its finger in the air and see which way is the wind blowing, and I'm going to go in that direction.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's why so many of the criticisms that have been leveled against the popular scholars in the West were leveled because they were being human. They were human. They're human. They were testing the waters. Like, oh, okay, well, some women want rights. Sisters are complaining about these and these problems. Well, we're going to do this and this. We're going to make sure that our messages are completely one-sided in their messaging towards sisters and not listening to any of the brothers' concerns related to their roles and what's required of them in marriage and what's required of sisters in marriage, things like that. So that created a wave of sentiment against them. A sizable minority, I would say, is against them, and led by people like DH who have capitalized on that kind of audience and said, hey, you know what, you guys are all disenfranchised, and I'll carry you under my wing, and it's kind of propelled them that way. But that kind of situation wouldn't happen if you have a scholarship who doesn't bend to the whims and desires of what people are coming to. It's important as a leader when you put yourself in position of leadership to listen to people, but you also have to pull yourself out of that situation too and see what wider society is like, and how Islam can apply to various types of situations. And it's oftentimes there's not a general rule that would fix a certain thing, but it's usually more on an individual level. Like someone who's been wronged in a relationship, right? They come to a scholar and say, so like 10 people like that come to a scholar and say that, hey, this is what happened, and all of a sudden they start seeing, oh, well, this is a big problem here.
Right.
How about telling them in that one specific situation that, hey, in this situation you should probably do this, but instead what happened was a widespread message was being given to society, or when people weren't even having certain problems within their marriages. Now all of a sudden people were having problems with their marriage because they heard so and so scholars say about, I'm entitled to this because I need a maid in my house, and like dudes are like, wait, I can't afford a maid.
For my hair, I want $250,000 and a paddy wagon and a G-Wagon and a trip to Mecca.
Sister, what are you talking about? You crazy? What are you doing? Yeah, we all saw that video. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Or you're talking about that one Instagram video?
Oh, that one Instagram video. Yeah, this girl's crazy. I mean, they live in Northern Virginia, which is near like the richest county in America. So I mean, I can't really be that mad at them. But yes, it was pretty ridiculous.
So, so there are a group of people who've just been disenfranchised by mainstream popular scholars who kind of went in the way of where they kind of created Islam to fit this left-wing amalgamation of values. There was a lot of solidarity with the left. Not that they were giving the green light to things like homosexuality or anything, but there was a kind of like a trade-off or a trade happening where they're going to be fighting for our rights. And in that podcast, right, Patrick Bet-David was talking about the numbers of Muslims that are voting Democrat.
Yes.
When that's contrary to their values.
Clearly doesn't make sense, right?
And what needs to be underscored in that in those the statistics is that Muslims were in survival mode in 2017, 2016 when those polls were taken.
Right.
Muslims were not thinking about the problems that we're seeing now when their children are under threat. I think if you took polls now about how Muslims feel about their relationship with left-wing politics, it would be completely different. I don't think it would still, I don't think we've made the progress we would like to see, but I think it would be significantly different. I think there are still many Muslim families that are still struggling with this indoctrination of not just, the rainbow pride stuff, but just their relationship of what a man and a woman should be in a marriage. And I think
who's the captain of the ship? Right.
Or a dad and a daughter. Right. There's so many families that are just being ripped apart because there's a whole generation of kids that are being brought up in this left-wing mindset where the man is some subservient creature who's inherently evil because he has evil powers in him, that toxic masculinity that are dangerous. He's inherently evil or inherently dangerous, and those kinds of things are coming into the dichotomy of core Muslim families who have been integrated into Western society. So Muslims are not immune to going back or regress into un-Islamic or a lack of Islam in their daily life. So that's how important apparatuses, state institutions are to society. So yes, we can give the shahadas, we can even give the dawah, the follow-up dawahs, we can have the scholars, but when you have institutions that are funding these ideologies, these belief systems, these are the movers and shakers of society. These things are the things that take root in society and further propel ideologies.
We are the early Sahaba. We are like the early Sahaba. We're not the early Sahaba. We are like the early Sahaba in this situation, where our babies are not being buried in the sand, but they're being buried in the nonsense of feminism, and you can just have a career and have a baby when you're 45. Oh wait, you're too old. Sorry. It's a different kind of test and trial. And we're also like the early Christians in the Roman Empire who had to deal with it. But we will meddle through this and be successful and gain victory, inshallah. I believe we can and we will. You've made an interesting point about the reaction to the, we'll say, less than stellar performance of certain scholars. And I don't want to demonize scholars. I love Jonathan A.C. Brown. I love them all. They're great guys. And I'm just a dumb redneck from Texas who used to drive a truck for a living. So who am I to criticize them for making a mistake?
You're definitely not a scholar.
I'm definitely not a scholar. So, I can only imagine what kind of insane things they have to go through and the pressure so I am not passing judgment on them for making a mistake. But you made an interesting point about DH, and I want to talk about DH, but not just DH the man. I want to talk about DH the phenomenon. Mm-hmm. And talk about this in terms of other religions and other situations throughout history. If you think about Ibn Taymiyyah, when he came and challenged the scholars of the day who were largely, classical, we're just part of these four madhabs and this is the way it is, and we're also many times Sufi, and we've got our taliqas, and we're all part of this, that, and the other, and we're running the show. And then Baghdad burned to the ground.
Yeah.
And here comes Ibn Taymiyyah. And what does Ibn Taymiyyah do? Bit of shirk. Y'all messing this up. This is wrong. This is wrong. And there was a sort of spiciness to what he was saying. And people at the time didn't like him.
Yeah.
But he was saying, and I don't agree with everything that Ibn Taymiyyah said. I don't agree with the whole hands of Allah thing, but I respect Ibn Taymiyyah, and I understand where he was coming from, and he made a lot of necessary and important criticisms. The Pharisees in the New Testament You know, one of the worst things you can be in Christian tradition is be the Pharisee, these harsh, judgmental, intolerant Jews who rejected the message of Jesus Christ. The Pharisees are these people who are like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is against Torah, this is blah, 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 this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. They're kind of harsh, kind of described as harsh, judgmental people and tough and not very kind or loving. But think about what was happening to the Jews in Palestine at that time. What was going on? They were being brutally occupied by the Romans, and their entire society was falling apart, and prostitution was rampant, and tax collectors were going around collecting everything. It was a disaster. It was a mess. Right? So let's fast forward. I'm going to say for myself, I don't get mad at Daniel Haqiqatjou's flying monkeys in my comment section. You know I don't? Because I used to be like them.
Yeah.
When I became Orthodox Christian, I didn't just become Orthodox Christian. I joined a jurisdiction of Orthodoxy called the Russian Orthodox Church Abroad, which, quick history lesson, was the group of people who fled Russia as the communists took over and pre-revolutionary Russia fell apart at the seams. So World War I, then the Civil War within Russia, and then the purges and the Stalin gulags and all that jazz in World War II. They fled all that and came to America. Those were traumatized people who passed down their intergenerational trauma to each other. And they, in the Orthodox world, even now, from when I talk to my friends, people, the Greeks, the Antiochians, people in the Orthodox Church of America, they look at Russian Orthodox Church Abroad people and they go, oh man, these people again. Kind of like some people look at the Salafis when the Salafis show up. Oh, these people again. A lot of Indonesians don't like the Salafis because they're harsh, intolerant, whatever, grumpy, whatever. And in the same sense, there's a lot of people who don't like the ROKOR, Russian Orthodox Church Abroad people here in the United States. It's a similar dynamic between regular mainline Muslims and Salafis. I joined the Russian Orthodox Church when I was like, how old was I, 14, 15? I joined with a family of converts who were running the church in Buffalo, New York, because my mom moved us out of Texas to Buffalo, where she's from. And the family, the converts, I've since reconciled and become friends with them again, but I had falling out with them for a while. But they were really great to me. They really helped me. They gave me a place to stay. They helped me get out of my house. These were people who had converted to Orthodoxy and chose to be part of the Russian Orthodox Church Abroad because they felt it was the only real Orthodox church, and Orthodoxy was how you're going to save your soul. And I believed that too. And these were people who had been missionaries in Colombia, and they had to leave Colombia because of the Colombian Civil War. So the trauma of losing, people who are traumatized of losing their home in their beloved Colombia, okay, getting involved in the Russian Orthodox Church with traumatized people who had to flee the Russian collapse of the Russian Empire and the rise of communism. And me, 14, 15-year-old me, my mother had some degree of interest in Eastern Orthodoxy because she read a lot of spiritual religious stuff. And so I was thinking at 14, 15 years old, I have to hold down the line. I got to do something.
Yeah.
I have to do something. The world is falling apart. And so I was like Daniel Haqiqatjou's flying monkeys in the comment section, but the Eastern Orthodox convert version of that for many years.
Yeah.
And so people say that Daniel Haqiqatjou is mean or that he's a grifter. Some people accuse DH of being a liar who manipulates data. I don't think that's true of him or his followers, at least not for the most part. I think he really believes what he says. And I think he goes too far because, they left Iran. They see what's going on in the Muslim world. He's Persian. And then he's grew up in Texas, and then he sees what's happening to America. You know, we're another collapsing society, another collapsing system. And he sees our failure at the it's not our failure, the failure at the scholarship level. You know, people say, oh, he goes too far. Oh, he's mean. Oh, he's a jerk. Oh, he's this. No, I think he genuinely believes what he's saying. And so when he like misinterprets things that people are saying, I don't think he's doing that intentionally, where he takes things too far, takes things out of context. It might be malicious and intentional, but I don't think so. I think he really believes that he's responding appropriately. And I say that because that was me, hyper responding, hyper overreacting.
No, I think there is genuinely things that are being taken out of context, but I think it fits with the message and the general sentiment. There's like an emotional truth that he feels is a problem. And if there's something that is kind of borderline that may not necessarily be in line with it may not fit perfectly, he'll liberally use it. One of the examples was he had made a video where there was I can't even remember this scholar's name, or he's an imam or something, and he was on a comedy program with what's her name? She's in the Wreck-It Ralph. What's her name? The
Wreck-It Ralph.
Not Amy Schindler. She's a Jewish comedian.
Sarah Silverman.
Sarah Silverman.
Yeah.
So they're having some kind of basketball contest. And she says something about like, whoever makes a shot, their religion is right. So they have a Jewish guy representing.
That's a very Jewish thing to do.
And there's like a Christian priest, and there's this imam. So he's using this guy as an example. This poor guy, he subscribed to this thing. He's not having a good time. He's not like, ho, Sarah, you jokester, you got me. I missed a shot. He's not indicating any kind of happiness being part of this. He looks really uncomfortable. Now, he used this guy as an example of him belittling Islam in a public, sphere. Genuinely, I don't follow that scholar. I don't, subscribe to whether I don't know about his belief system or anything, but I know genuinely that he's not like willfully trying to undermine Islam. He thinks he visibly looks uncomfortable. He's not even smiling. He's not even.
He's like, what did I sign up for?
He's what many of us who are Muslims sign up for when we go out to a party with coworkers or something and find out there's alcohol everywhere. We're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
We got trapped.
Yeah.
We got trapped. Oh, I can't believe I fell for this.
Yeah.
That is living in a Muslim society or a non-Muslim society, trying to spread your message, but you get somehow cornered into or wound up into a situation you're not. Same thing with the whole libations thing, where he had on Umar Suleiman, where he was pouring the water and stuff. No one knew what a libation was, first of all. Okay, that word was completely new to the Muslim world, to everyone. Forget about Muslims. Most non-Muslims don't even know what a libation is.
Right.
That's some kind of religious practice, etc. And you, as an imam, you're going to be put into situations where you're going to be. It's completely new. You're the representation. You're the gateway, the entryway into a huge society, right? Using that as an example to say that, hey, you know what? He is bringing foreign practices into Islam. These kind of things are completely, like, anyone who knows Sheikh Umar Suleiman knows that, he's not an agent of liberal capitalism or anything like that. It's completely an unfair criticism to use examples like that. Yes, I'm sure if you asked him, in retrospect, he even actually
He did. He apologized.
He apologized several times. But it's never enough for someone like Daniel, because he needs that antagonist in his story, because he's got this audience. There's no coming back for people like that.
Well, hold on.
For our listeners, there was no. This topic wasn't like pre-planned or anything. This is just because Harry decided. I'm not like.
I'm not trying to.
We're just trying to iron out ideas.
No, I'm trying. I got you. Yeah, I'm not trying to spring on DH. Like I said. Yeah, and also the thing with Omar Suleiman at the border, where he's protesting what he thought were unjust, inhumane practices, and there just happened to be gay people. He was endorsing gay people. But here's the thing: I was Daniel Haqiqatjou when I was Russian Orthodox, and I responded exactly the way he responds to those things, and I believed what I was saying. I was not intentionally trying to distort things. I was not trying to get a rise out of people. I know it is possible that DH is intentionally distorting things. I don't think so. I think that is really his worldview. I genuinely believe it.
I do. I'm not saying that he genuinely doesn't believe that. He does definitely believe that these prominent scholars in the West are who he says they are.
Okay, but hold on. He's not making these things up, and he's not intentionally over-exaggerating these things to make a point. He really believes what he's seeing.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
okay.
He's not. I'm not saying that he's right for over-exaggerating these things. I'm saying that he really believes his over-exaggerations, because I believe that because I was in that situation, and there were lots of situations like this in the Orthodox American world. A lot of controversies like this in the Orthodox world. Orthodox world is riddled with infighting and controversies, just like the Muslim world. And this would happen all the time. A priest or a bishop would say something just innocently, or have these sorts of things like what happened with Muslim scholars, like happened with Omar Suleiman. And the ultra-conservative Orthodox people would be like, just like me, just like DH. And it was the same sort of phenomenon. And that's why I'm saying you see this in certain forms of Salafism, and you see this in the phenomena of the Pharisees in the New Testament. Whether that story is 100% accurate or not, it's maybe just a metaphor, maybe just an allegory, what have you. But there's a certain degree of truth to that hyper-reactionary thing, because the world is falling apart. So, yes, there's also... DH has said that people are taking him out of context or creating fake videos. He's said that people have said that DH is creating fake videos or whatever about them.
What was certainly fake was one of his thumbnails where he's making Yasser Hadi and Omar Salman look like demonic faces. That's when I said, you know what, you've crossed the line, but now you're going way past the line.
Yeah, he's crossed the line. But he believes what he's doing. He's not doing it intentionally just to get a rise out of people. He really believes what he's doing. He really does.
Oh, yeah.
He's like in a time war.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know what? ISIS truly believed in what they were doing too. You know what? I'm not.
Oh man,
being an Iraq war veteran.
DH is literally the same thing as ISIS.
Well, of course.
I'm kidding.
No, I know you're kidding, but there's their followers. When you look at the way ISIS structured their arguments, it looks like everything is from the Quran and Sunnah. When you look at their textual evidences, you're like, holy crap, they have justifications for everything that they're doing. And you're like, what? Mm-hmm. Oh my, was I taught wrong? Did my scholars teach me something different? And then, you see the difference? You can justify a lot of things and make it logical and truly believe in your justice. This doesn't mean that you're building an audience or you're building something because of your intentions are irrelevant. You know what I mean? I'm saying your intentions are irrelevant because the end result is what matters. You've essentially, or at least your message on its face is what matters. Right. And ultimately, does your message hold up to scrutiny? When people around the Muslim world in the West, when all the major institutions, Muslim institutions, look at your message and say, hey, you know what? Is this person does he have a point? There are many times he's right about stuff. Right?
very
There are
brilliant
many.
dude.
I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
I've been on
Me
record
neither.
with saying that he's right about many things.
Yes.
And I've been wrong, and I've been on the record where he's off about stuff.
Yeah.
So, I feel like when the general body of Muslims is saying that, hey, saying especially, okay, let's just scroll back to ISIS, right? There are many Muslims would say, hey, these arguments that ISIS is making is correct.
Yeah.
But how do you execute that? Oh, their thing was literal execution. Like, hey, we just kill everyone who stands in our way. Well, Muslims were like, whoa. We said you may be right about, unfair American intervention in the Muslim world and things like that.
Right.
We agree with that. Similar to Daniel saying like, oh, you know what, we agree with, we would be in agreement with Daniel about how certain scholars or certain statements or releases within Muslim institutions were incorrect. Yes, but the execution of, or the how you make change to that is also equally important, right?
Right.
So how ISIS, for example, said, hey, you know what? These are all the problems that are happening because of Western intervention in the Muslim world, and we're just going to just steamroll them. Black and white. There's no compromise, and we're going to implement our version of Islam, and that's the only version of Islam that matters. That was their solution.
Right.
So they came from a correct premise in terms of the unjust treatment of Muslims around the world. Similarly, Daniel's coming from that same part. The same thing, like, hey, yeah, you guys all have valid, a lot of his concerns and issues are valid. But how do you execute that is the question.
I think with, I was looking at I was reading more about Ibn Taymiyyah. And apparently, from what I've read, and I also saw this on Blogging Theology, where Paul, Blogging Theology,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's a great show. And
Awesome.
he read that Paul pointed out
Paul
that-
Williams, yeah.
Paul Williams pointed out that Ibn Taymiyyah later in his life seems to have kind of mellowed out. He had some kind of experiences that he also seemed to have changed his mind. He encountered people who offered him another scholarly point of view on eternal punishment. So apparently, according to Paul Williams and Blogging Theology, and I've seen this in a couple other places too, a couple other scholarly places too, not just on YouTube. I've talked to a couple people who've told me this. Even Taymiyyah, towards the end of his life, came to the conclusion that the hellfire was not eternal, which is a minority scholarly opinion. Most classical Muslims, even if they're not as conservative and reactionary as Ibn Taymiyyah, will say, well, there's going to be some exceptions on the Day of Judgment for those who didn't hear, but pretty much, you have to become Muslim. It's the deal to get into the paradise. And Ibn Taymiyyah came to the conclusion that the paradise, that the hellfire was not eternal.
I don't know about that.
Apparently. So why I'm bringing this
Yeah.
up is, I'm not bringing this up to get into dialogue about the
Yeah.
hellfire being eternal. Now. The reason I'm bringing this up is, as Ibn Taymiyyah progressed and as I would say the trauma of the Mongolians burning down Baghdad, which is pretty daggum traumatic, started to subside, he started to mellow out in some of his viewpoints and kind of step away from his harsh reactionary way of being, which was kind of necessary at the time. Like, the scholars and the people running the show in the Muslim world, they were doing some nonsense. They needed to get called out. Doesn't mean that everything that he said was right, but he needed to call out. And Ibn Taymiyyah, just like DH, was very popular with a certain subset of people, and other people really hated him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to get into anything because I'm not a scholar of that, and that our audience
Me neither.
who's well versed in this subject will pounce on me and say that how dare you guys talk about, because I know there are many people within or who follow his writings. They say that there's a lot of lies that were created about him and his beliefs. So I don't want to get into that because we're not experts in that
we're
field,
not.
and we can't sift through what's right and wrong about that. But as far as wisdom, coming to people who are, as they grow, and when people, you talked about your life as in Orthodoxy. I grew up in Islamic movements, and I had really, strong sentiments
Right.
Towards, how Muslim problems should be solved, and,
Right.
and so I was passionate about many different things that would be considered extreme. And as I grew older, this is when I was like, young, because I came out of like idolizing communism when I was young. When I was 16, 17, I loved Che Guevara. My thing was Che Guevara. It's not even communism it was the sacrifice Che
That
made.
explains why you still hate black people. Now we understand. That's why you want to throw gay people off of buildings and cut them up with machetes.
So I love Che because it wasn't because of communism. Even though I read communism and I that was kind of my entry point into learning about Che, I would read Trotsky and Lenin's works and stuff, and I understood maybe a percentage of that high level of writing that they did. But it wasn't until I learned about Che, someone who was a doctor, a physician. He sacrificed everything,
Right.
riding around a motorcycle throughout South America, was seeing the struggles of the everyday farmer and wanting to sacrifice everything to fight for them. I was like, wow, this is what the Muslim world needs.
I just had a flash of a montage of Che Guevara on a motorcycle with like whatever the communist version of the sheet is playing in the background.
So,
But I get your point.
I
get
felt
your point.
then I got introduced to Islamic movements, and I said, oh, wow, we need to transpose what Che was like onto Islam, because we need that kind of a figure. We do. I mean, in a certain sense, we do need someone who rallies Muslims to a common goal in the purity of Islam. But it wasn't what transpired after 2011 were a horrible interpretation of ideas that wanted to kill innocent civilians and stuff like that, and grappling with that was really difficult. Like, oh my God, okay, how do I justify people who I thought were going to fight for Islam now are committing all kinds of atrocities around the world? And then so that kind of a maturity takes place, and I know for a fact Daniel will go through that, and
Yeah, he will.
10 years down the line he'll look back at some of these videos that he's made against some of these scholars, he'll cringe, and he's ultimately made his audience and a huge following based on some of these attacks. But there's also shining moments of his where he's done fantastic job on debating against many people who are Islamophobic and haters of Islam. So I'm not in the camp where there's very few people in the world I say are bad people. Like
Likewise.
like I tell my son, I'm like, this because he would always ask me, Baba, is he a bad person? Is he a bad guy? And then like after a few of these things, because he'd watch me watch YouTube videos and say, it's like, is that a bad guy? Well, what's his position? So I broke him out. I'm like, so you can't look at the world like this.
That's a childish way of looking at the world.
Because you're going to take this view of how you're looking at people as bad and good, and you're going to transpose it throughout your life.
Right.
And you're going to look at everyone as a good or bad, and that's not how majority of human beings are. Most people are in the middle, and there's going to be good qualities about people, and there's going to be bad qualities of people, and you're going to have to sift through and find out who's providing you the most value, the most wisdom, who's improving your life. Those are the people you want to follow. It's not necessarily that people are bad or wrong or evil.
Right.
It's that you want to find people who are maximizing your worship, getting you closer to Allah, who are facilitating your end objective to go to paradise.
Right.
And it clicked with them, like, oh, okay. Like, it's not as easy as it is in the cartoons where you purely find a evil person. Yes, there are evil tyrants who are torturing Muslims and all kinds of oppression, whether it's Muslims or non-Muslims. There's all kinds of tyrants all across the world that are pure evil.
Yeah.
Yes, there are those people. I'm not
yeah.
saying they don't exist, but the majority of human beings, it'll be hard to find that kind of evil in people, and you're doing yourself a disservice when you try to make the world out to be as black and white as you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we're almost at 3 hours now, bro.
Woo-wee!
It was a pleasure having you. What's next for your show?
Well, shout out to one of my subscribers named Rizan. I think he's Indonesian. Yeah, he's Indonesian. He wanted me to make a response video to the Patrick Davis debate that happened recently. Rizan, you heard some of it? And Rizan? Not Rizan. Is he Pakistani or Indonesian?
Who?
Rizan. One of my subscribers.
Rizan? R-I-Z-N?
R-I-E-Z Alpha November. Pakistani or Indonesian?
That didn't sound like a Pakistani name.
Anyways, Brother Rizan, I promised you that I'd make a follow-up response video in the next 2-3 days or so. So it's coming, brother. You heard maybe a preview of it. Although I might just recap what I already said. Maybe add a couple other things. I don't know. But that's about it.
YouTube, Brother Harry.
Yes.
Right? TikTok is...
Harry on an Adventure.
You got to change that to Brother Harry. Just make one thing.
I tried. I don't know how. I'm just technologically illiterate.
Make one name so that everyone could find you across all the platforms.
I know I should. I got to fix that problem.
Anyway,
Somebody
folks
help
who
me.
listen to the Mad Mamluks, make sure you throw a comment in the comment section below. Undoubtedly, you guys are passionate about many of the topics that we've talked about today. Let us know what your thoughts. Make sure you hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't done. Also, hit the notification bell to be notified every time we go live. Help us out through patreon.com/the Mad Mamluks. We don't make a penny off of your donations. All your donations go to funding this show, bringing on guests, etc. We hope you enjoyed this time with Harrison Elliff, aka Harry, aka Harry on Adventure,
Brother Harry.
aka brother Harry. Otherwise, we'll see you all next time.
All right.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, brother. Walaikum assalam, brother. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man, no problem. And please come back again, inshallah.
Inshallah. Hey, do we have any comments from the...
Let's see here.
Any comments from the peanut gallery? Harry, you're a weirdo.
No, there's just a lot of people who are making, tangential comments related to nothing with a question mark here, though. But yeah.
Really? Normally people have something to say. Really? Wow. Not even hate? I'll take hate. Hate's okay. All right.
Yeah.
Hate.
Nothing here. Usually I have one of the guys look through all these questions and stuff, and they'll give them to me at the end of the show, but both of them are gone. Left me holding the flag.
You're doing too much at once. You need
Yeah.
a crew.
Do the video switching back and forth. That's
You're
all
doing
me.
everything, man. You got this incredible fit up here. Well, hey, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
Thank
man.
you.
Anytime. Are you going to move back to the States, or are you going to stick around in Indonesia?
I'm going to be continuing to do what I've done for about 6 to 8 years, which is go back and forth. I now have residency in Indonesia, so I live with my wife over there, and I'm trying to figure out what to do next. This YouTube is kind of becoming my full-time thing, though. I don't make a lot of money off this. I already got my money from my my medical retirement, so I don't really need the money. It's just I'm just having fun.
It's awesome, man, because you have all this time on your hands to just learn, sharpen your skills, prepare yourself to take this YouTube thing, and the sky's the limit, because especially with all the time and resources you have, I'm like, it'll be fantastic. Inshallah.
Yeah, I've been doing seeker's guidance here and there. I've been continuing to get more deep into commentary, and I hate when people say, "Oh, you're just learning things on Google." Okay, I'm going to quality people on Google. It doesn't matter how I get there. It matters if I get quality or not.
People always have something to say about something.
Have the pedigree. I'm going to quality, man. It's not about pedigree. It's about quality.
People have to say things to make themselves feel better about themselves at the end of the day, and it's just their own. I just feel bad for people who, and I also remember myself,
same here.
where I was kind of like that person. I'm like, oh man, I used to have that quality, and you just realize like people are on different places in their life where eventually they're gonna grow out of it, and they're gonna cringe at themselves like, oh man, I used to have horrible feelings of jealousy, envy, all kinds of terrible thoughts. But
Man, I cringe at stuff I posted 2 days ago.
that's awesome, man. It's always evolving, always trying to get better.
Always,
So
baby.
All right, man. Thank you all for listening. We'll see y'all next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Like, Y'all take care now. Bye-bye.